The sharp scissors snipped through another holiday photo, carefully removing Jamie's smiling face as if she had never existed. Her mother worked methodically, adding the mutilated picture to a growing pile of family memories that now excluded. Her own daughter, birthdays, graduations, vacations, all rewritten to erase Jamie completely. Across town, Jamie stared at her phone, the screen illuminating her tear-stained face as she read the desperate text from her father. "We're losing the house. I know we don't deserve it, but we need your help." What would make a family systematically erase someone from their history, only to reach out when everything was crumbling around them? And what would you do if the very people who tried to erase your existence suddenly needed you to be their salvation? If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe to our channel and share any similar experiences you've had with family estrangement in the comments below. Jamie Sullivan locked her office door at exactly 7:42 p.m., 15 minutes later than she'd promised herself. The downtown financial district had emptied hours ago, leaving just the occasional cleaning crew and fellow workaholics scattered throughout the sleek high-rise. "Another late night, Ms. Sullivan?" asked the security guard as she crossed the marble. "Lobby. The markets never sleep, Frank," she replied with a practiced smile. "Someone's got to keep an eye on them." Outside, the autumn air carried a crisp bite. Jamie pulled her tailored coat tighter and walked briskly toward her apartment 8. Blocks away, the rhythmic click of her heels against concrete matched her heartbeat. Steady, controlled, purposeful. Her phone buzzed again. The third time since her father's initial text. She didn't need to look to know it was him, growing increasingly desperate. With each unanswered message, by the time Jamie reached her building, a renovated warehouse with exposed brick and industrial chic aesthetics, she'd received 2 more messages. The doorman nodded as she entered, and she rode the elevator to the 12th floor in silence, finally alone with her thoughts. Her apartment greeted her with programmed warmth and soft lighting. Everything in its place, minimalist furniture, tasteful art, the single houseplant Maya had insisted she needed to keep something alive besides her career. The place was beautiful, expensive, and sometimes felt as hollow as her family photo albums back home. Jamie kicked off her heels and poured herself 2 fingers of bourbon. She'd earned it today after securing the Henderson portfolio, a 7-figure account that would likely earn her another bonus. Money had never been the problem. Money was the thing she understood, the language she spoke fluently when emotional. Vocabulary failed her. She finally checked her phone. "Dad, 5:14 p.m. We're losing the house. I know we don't deserve it, but we need your help. Dad, 6:02 p.m. Please, Jamie, just talk to us. Dad, 6:47 p.m. Your mother doesn't know I'm reaching out. Dad, 7:21 p.m. We have 30 days before foreclosure. Dad, 7:55 p.m. I wouldn't ask if there was any other way." Jamie placed the phone face down on the counter and took a long sip of bourbon. The irony wasn't lost on her. After 5 years of silence, after being methodically erased from family history, they needed her financial expertise. The very career they'd condemned had made her valuable to them again. Her doorbell rang at 8:30 p.m., right on schedule. Maya never missed their Tuesday dinner, even when Jamie forgot. "I brought Thai," Maya announced, holding up a bag of takeout containers. "And before you tell me you're not hungry, I watched you skip lunch during our video call, so don't even try it." Maya Lopez had been Jamie's roommate in college and remained her closest friend, possibly her only real friend, through the years of career climbing and family fallout. Where Jamie was reserved and analytical, Maya was expressive and intuitive, a child psychologist who read people as easily as Jamie read balance sheets. "I got the Henderson account," Jamie said, retrieving plates from her cabinet. "Congratulations, though I'm sensing that's not what's on your mind." Maya studied her friend's face. "You've got that look." "What look?" "The one you get when your family crashes into your carefully constructed walls." Maya began unpacking containers. "What happened?" Jamie slid her phone across the counter. Maya read the messages, her expression softening with each one. "Oh, Jamie." "Yeah. Are you going to respond?" Jamie served herself a heap of pad thai she wasn't sure she could eat. "I don't know. Part of me wants to ignore it, just like they've ignored my existence for 5 years. Another part can't help but care," Maya finished for her. "It's pathetic, isn't it? They cut me out of every family photo, stopped inviting me to holidays, told extended family I was too busy with my big city job to attend functions. My own mother can't even say my name without looking like she's tasted something bitter, and yet here I am, actually considering helping them. Maya reached across the counter and squeezed Jamie's hand. It's not pathetic to care about family, even when they've hurt you. Is it family when they only reach out because they need money? I don't know, Maya admitted, but I do know you'll torture yourself either way. If you ignore them, you'll wonder if you should have helped. If you help them, you'll wonder if you're just being used. Jamie pushed her food around her plate. When did you get so wise? Around the same time you started making obscene amounts of money, Maya grinned. One of us had to develop emotional intelligence. They ate in comfortable silence for a while before Maya asked, "What does your gut tell you to do?" Jamie considered. This, her gut, that instinctive financial advisor that had never steered her wrong with investments, was suspiciously quiet on this matter. My gut says, I need to know more before I decide. 5 years of silence doesn't just end with a text. Message about foreclosure. So you'll call him? Jamie nodded slowly. I'll call, but I'm not promising anything beyond that. After Maya left, Jamie stood at her floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city lights. Success had given her independence, respect, financial security, everything her parents had insisted she couldn't have if she abandoned the family business. She picked up her phone and typed a response. I'll call tomorrow at noon. Then she set an alarm, knowing sleep wouldn't come easily tonight. 5 years earlier, the Sullivan family dining room had always been a battlefield disguised as polished mahogany and fine china. Tonight was no different, except that Jamie had finally brought her own ammunition. A job offer? In Chicago? Her father's voice remained measured, but the vein pulsing at his temple betrayed his anger. After all the money we spent on your education, it's at Harrington Financial, one of the top firms in the country. Jamie kept her tone steady, professional. The starting salary is double what I'd make here, and the advancement opportunities, we had an understanding, her mother interrupted, setting down her fork with precise control. You went to business school to take over Sullivan Furniture. The plan was always for you to come home after graduation. That was your plan, Mom, not mine. So the last 4 years were what, exactly? A waste of our money? Her father pushed away from the table, pacing the length of the dining room. This family has built this business for 3 generations. Your grandfather started with 1 store. I expanded to 5. It was supposed to be your legacy. Jamie had rehearsed this conversation a dozen times, but the reality cut deeper than she'd anticipated. I appreciate everything you've done for me, but I never promised to take over the business. I want to build my own path. Your own path. Her mother's laugh held no humor. Always so special, aren't you, Jamie? Always thinking you're better than where you came from. That's not what this is about. Then what is it about? Her father demanded. Explain to me why you'd throw away a guaranteed future to go work for strangers who will use you up and spit you out the minute profits dip. Jamie took a deep breath. The furniture business is struggling, Dad. You know it is. Online. Retailers are dominating the market. Your customer base is aging, and you've resisted every suggestion I've made about modernizing. Oh, here we go. Her mother rolled her eyes. The great financial genius telling us how we've done everything wrong for 30 years. I never said that. But the business model needs updating if it's going to survive another generation. Her father's face reddened. So now you're an expert? 3 summer internships and suddenly you know more than people who've dedicated their lives to this business? That's not what I meant. No, it's exactly what you meant. He slammed his hand on the table, making the dishes jump. You've always thought you were too good for us. Too smart for the family business. You got those fancy scholarships and started looking down on everything we built. Dad, please. Don't, Dad, please me. This is about loyalty, Jamie. This is about responsibility to your family. Jamie felt her own anger rising. Responsibility? I've done everything you asked. I got the degree you wanted. I interned at the company every summer. I've tried to show you how to compete in today's market, but you shut down every suggestion, because your suggestions would bankrupt us. Her father's voice echoed off the walls. Online sales platforms, social media marketing, all these trendy ideas that cost a fortune with no guaranteed return. They're not trendy ideas, Dad. They're how business works now. The world is changing, and Sullivan Furniture is getting left behind. A heavy silence filled the room. Her mother's face had gone cold, a familiar mask that Jamie had seen countless times growing up, whenever she'd brought home a report card that wasn't perfect enough, whenever she'd questioned family. traditions, whenever she'd wanted something different than what had been planned for her. "So that's it?" Her father's voice had dropped dangerously low. "You're choosing strangers over family?" "I'm choosing my career, my future. Your future was here." He gestured around them, to the house built from furniture store profits, to the life they'd constructed. "Everything we've done has been for you and Ryan. Ryan is happy taking over operations," Jamie countered. "He loves the business. I never have." "Because you're too good for it," her mother said bitterly. "No, because it's not my passion. Why would you want someone running the business who doesn't love it?" Her father shook his head. "This isn't about passion. It's about duty, family, legacy, and what about my happiness? Does that factor in at all?" Her mother's laugh was sharp. "Happiness? You think your father and I always did what made us happy? We did what was necessary. We sacrificed. That's what family does." Jamie stood, unable to sit under their disapproval any longer. "I've made my decision. I start in Chicago next month." Her father's expression hardened into something Jamie had never seen before. Not disappointment or anger, but something colder. Rejection. "If you walk away from this family business, you walk away from this family, Dad." "You don't mean that." "I do." His voice was granite. "This business is our legacy. It's who we are. If you can't respect that, if you can't contribute to it, then you're making your choice very clear. You're giving me an ultimatum, the business or nothing." "Your father is right," her mother said, standing beside him in united opposition. "Family stands together. If you're not with us, you're against us." Jamie looked between them, searching for any softening, any opening for compromise. There was none. "Then I guess we're done here." She reached for her coat, hands trembling. "I'll get my things tomorrow while you're at the store." "Don't bother," her mother said. "We'll pack them for you." Jamie paused at the dining room doorway. "Is this really how you want to leave things?" Her father turned away. "You made your choice, Jamie, not us." The next day, Jamie found boxes of her belongings stacked neatly on the front porch. She loaded them into her car while neighbors pretended not to watch. When she finished, she stood on the porch one last time, key in hand. After a moment's hesitation, she slipped it under the welcome mat instead of through the mail slot. A small, foolish part of her had hoped they might come to the door. They didn't. She drove away from Oak Ridge, from Sullivan Furniture, from the life that had been prescribed for her since birth. She didn't cry until she crossed the state line. The phone call had been brief, stilted, and devoid of the emotional outbursts Jamie had anticipated. Her father had simply given her the address, as if she could forget where she'd grown up, and asked when she'd arrive. No pleasantries, no how are yous, just the bare minimum of coordination. Her mother hadn't spoken on the call at all, though Jamie could hear her breathing in the background. Now, 3 days later, Jamie's rental car idled at the edge of Oak Ridge, the town she'd left behind 5 years ago. She'd flown in that morning, told her assistant she'd be unreachable for 2 days, and rented the most anonymous, mid-sized sedan the airport agency offered. Something about driving back in her luxury. Car felt wrong, like she'd be rubbing her success in their faces. "Okay, Sullivan, get it together," she muttered to herself, finally putting the car in drive. Oak Ridge hadn't changed much. The same main street lined with struggling businesses, the same courthouse square with its weathered gazebo, the same diner where she'd had her first job at 16. If anything, the town looked more tired than she remembered. Storefronts that had been barely hanging on now sitting empty, their windows papered over. She slowed as she passed Sullivan Furniture, the family flagship store that had anchored the north end of Main Street since her grandfather's time. The large display windows that had once showcased their finest pieces were covered with oversized sale signs. "Everything must go," declared a banner strung across the entrance. A handful of cars sat in the parking lot, far fewer than should be there on a weekday afternoon. Jamie frowned. She'd expected financial trouble based on her father's messages, but seeing the store in such obvious distress made it real in a way text messages couldn't. Something tight formed in her chest. Not quite sympathy, not quite satisfaction, but a complicated tangle of both. She turned onto Elmwood Drive, the wide, tree-lined street where she'd grown up. Here, too, changes were subtle but telling. Lawns that had once been immaculately maintained showed signs of neglect. A few houses sported "for sale" signs. The neighborhood that had represented success in her childhood now whispered of decline. The Sullivan family home appeared at the end of the cul-de-sac, a 2-story colonial with white columns and black shutters. Exactly as she remembered it, except it wasn't. The paint had dulled, the shutters needed repair, and the landscaping that her mother had once supervised with military precision had grown unruly. Most telling was the foreclosure notice partially visible on the front door, even from the street. Jamie parked at the curb rather than in the driveway, a small act of distancing that wasn't lost on her. She checked her reflection in the rearview mirror. Professional, polished, put together, the successful daughter returning from exile. She'd chosen her outfit carefully. A simple blazer over dark jeans, elegant but not flashy. No designer logos, no obvious displays of wealth. She remained in the car, hands gripping the steering wheel. 5 years of birthdays, holidays, and milestones had passed without a single caller card from her parents. 5 years of building a life they'd predicted would fail. 5 years of proving them wrong while secretly hoping they'd notice. And now they needed her. The irony was almost too perfect. A curtain moved in the front window, someone watching her sit in indecision. That was enough to propel her into action. Jamie grabbed her purse and a leather portfolio containing the preliminary financial research she'd done since her father's call. Always be prepared, a Sullivan family motto that had served her well, even as she'd rejected everything else they stood for. The walk to the front door felt longer than it should have. Each step stirred memories. Running across this lawn as a child, struggling with grocery bags as a teenager, walking away with boxes of belongings as a young adult. Before she could knock, the door opened. Her father stood in the entryway, and the sight of him made her breath catch. Daniel Sullivan had always been a commanding presence. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a confidence that filled any room he entered. The man before her was still tall, but his shoulders had rounded, his once dark hair now completely gray, his face lined with stress and age. He'd grown old in 5 years, and the realization hit Jamie with unexpected force. "You made it," he said, his voice lacking the authority she remembered. This wasn't the man who'd issued ultimatums and built a business through sheer force of will. This was someone diminished. "I said I would." Jamie kept her voice neutral. "Professional." He stepped back to let her enter, and she crossed the threshold into her childhood home. The familiar scent hit her first, lemon furniture polish and the faint pine fragrance her mother had always preferred. Some things, at least, remained constant. The interior told the same story as the exterior, a home in decline. Furniture that had once been arranged with perfect symmetry now seemed haphazard. Surfaces that had gleamed under her mother's fastidious care showed a fine layer of dust. Small signs of neglect were everywhere, from water rings on side tables to scuffs on the hardwood floors. Her father led her to the living room without speaking, and there was her mother, perched on the edge of the sofa as if ready for flight. Elizabeth Sullivan had aged too, though she'd fought it with more determination. Her hair was dyed the same chestnut brown it had always been, her makeup carefully applied, but her hands betrayed her, twisting a tissue into shreds on her lap. "Hello, Jamie," she said, her voice flat, eyes not quite meeting her daughter's. "Mom." Jamie remained standing, suddenly unsure of the protocol for greeting family who had disowned you. A handshake seemed too formal, a hug too intimate. Her father resolved the dilemma by gesturing to an armchair. "Have a seat. We appreciate you coming." Jamie sat, placing her portfolio on her lap like armor. "Your message sounded urgent." And just like that, they were strangers conducting business, the weight of 5 years' silence hovering between them. "Coffee?" her father asked, his hand already reaching for the carafe on the coffee table. The familiarity of the gesture, her father, had always served coffee during difficult conversations, almost broke Jamie's carefully maintained composure. "Thank you," she said, accepting the cup more out of habit than desire. The silence stretched as her father poured cups for himself and her mother. "So," Jamie finally said, setting her untouched coffee aside, "let's talk about why I'm here." Her father cleared his throat. "As I mentioned, we're facing foreclosure. The bank gave us 30 days' notice last week. I understand that part. What I don't understand is how it got to this point." Her parents exchanged glances, a silent communication that had always excluded her. "The business has been struggling," her father admitted. "The economy, changing consumer habits, competition from the big box stores and online retailers. It's been a perfect storm." Jamie opened her portfolio. "I did some preliminary research. Sullivan Furniture's revenue has been declining steadily for at least 7 years. Not just recently. Your market share has dropped by nearly 40%. Your online presence is virtually non-existent, and your most recent filing shows you've been operating at a loss for the past 3 quarters. Her mother's lips thinned. I see you've been keeping tabs on us. No, Mom. I did my homework before coming here like any financial advisor would. Jamie kept her tone professional. It took me 15 minutes to find this information. It's all public record. Her father ran a hand through his thinning hair. We diversified into real estate investments when the store started struggling. Commercial properties, mostly. It seemed secure at the time. Until the market crashed last year, Jamie said. Yes. He looked older with each admission. We borrowed against the house to cover business losses. When the commercial tenants started defaulting on their leases, we couldn't make the mortgage payments. Jamie made notes, her financial advisor persona firmly in place. It was easier this way, treating them like clients rather than the parents, who had excised her from their lives. The total debt? She asked. $823,000, her father said quietly. Jamie kept her expression neutral, but inwardly she winced. It was a substantial sum, though not insurmountable with her current assets. The question wasn't whether she could help, but whether she should. And you've tried restructuring the debt? Negotiating with the bank? Of course we have, her mother snapped. We're not completely incompetent. I never said you were. Jamie met her mother's gaze directly. I'm trying to understand the situation before making any decisions. What your mother means, her father interjected, is that we've exhausted all conventional options. We've spoken with 3 different banks. No one will refinance given our current financial situation. Jamie closed her portfolio. What exactly are you asking of me? Her father leaned forward. We need a loan to clear the immediate debt and stop the foreclosure. Once that's handled, we can sell the business and commercial properties in an orderly fashion, rather than at fire sale prices. And the house? We'd like to keep it if possible, her mother said, a hint of her old pride returning. It's been in the family for generations. I know. Jamie stood and walked to the window, looking out at the backyard where she'd once played. The old oak tree still stood, though the tire swing was long gone. What happened to Ryan? Why? Isn't he involved in this discussion? Another silence. Another exchanged glance. Ryan left the business 2 years ago, her father finally said. Jamie turned back, surprised. Left? To do what? He took a job with a furniture manufacturer in North Carolina. Her father's voice held residual bitterness. Said he needed to broaden his experience. So he abandoned the family business too. Jamie couldn't keep the irony from her voice. It wasn't like that, her mother said quickly. Ryan tried to make it work. He put everything into saving the store. But you still need a villain in the story, and I'm it. Jamie returned to her seat. Let me guess. You blamed the business failure on my leaving, even though the decline started long before I went to Chicago. That's not fair, her father protested. Isn't it? You cut me out of your lives. Literally cut me out of family photos, because I chose a different path. Now you want my help, but you're still defending Ryan even though he made the same choice. I did. Her mother stood abruptly. This was a mistake. I told your father you'd throw this in our faces. I'm not throwing anything in your faces, Jamie said, keeping her voice level. I'm pointing out a double standard. You disowned me for leaving, but when Ryan left, you understood. The difference is what, exactly? That he tried and failed first. That he's your son and not your daughter. The difference, her mother said, trembling with suppressed emotion, is that he didn't abandon us when we needed him most. He didn't look down on everything we built. He didn't tell us our life's work was worthless. I never said that. You didn't have to. It was in every suggestion. You made every criticism of how we ran things. You thought you knew better than everyone because you had a fancy degree and big ideas. Elizabeth, her father warned, placing a hand on her arm. This isn't helping. Jamie took a deep breath. This was exactly why she'd hesitated to come. The old arguments surfacing within minutes. The same accusations. The same fundamental disconnect. I didn't come here to rehash the past, she said. I came because you asked for my help. If you don't want it, we do, her father interrupted. We do want your help. Your mother is just... This is difficult for all of us. Jamie nodded, giving herself a moment to regain her professional demeanor. I need to see all your financial records, bank statements, tax returns, business accounts, investment portfolios, everything. I'll need to understand exactly what we're dealing with before I can make any decisions. Of course, her father agreed. I have everything in my office. Good. And I'll need access to the store's books as well. Her father hesitated. The accounting system is outdated, meaning we still use the same software we did when you were in high school. I know it's not the most efficient, but it's fine. I'll work with whatever you have. Jamie checked her watch. I have a hotel room in town. I'll start reviewing everything tonight and continue tomorrow. A hotel? Her mother said. You could stay here. Your room is still... The unfinished sentence hung between them. Your room is still what? Still yours? Still as you left it? Still waiting for your return? The hotel is better, Jamie said firmly. I need space to work, and space to breathe, to process, to maintain the emotional distance this situation required. Her father nodded, looking disappointed but not surprised. I'll get those files for you. As he left the room, Jamie found herself alone with her mother. For the first time in 5 years, the silence stretched uncomfortably. You look well, her mother finally said. The words stilted. Thank you. So do you. Another silence. This doesn't mean everything is fixed between us, Jamie said quietly. You understand that, right? Her mother's face hardened. We're not asking for forgiveness, Jamie. We're asking for financial help. Right. Jamie gave a short, humorless laugh. How could I forget? It's always been about the money. The Sullivan furniture office hadn't changed in the slightest. The same wood-paneled walls, the same green banker's lamp, the same leather chair that creaked when Jamie sat down. Her father had left her with 6 cardboard boxes of financial records after a cursory explanation of their filing system, which was generous terminology for what appeared to be organizational chaos. I'll be on the sales floor if you need anything, he'd said, hesitating at the door as if wanting to say more. Whatever it was remained unspoken as he closed the door behind him. Jamie surveyed the boxes with a mixture of frustration and professional determination. This was her element. Numbers didn't lie. Numbers didn't hold grudges. Numbers didn't cut people out of family photos. With a sigh, she rolled up her sleeves and got to work. 3 hours later, the picture was even grimmer than she'd anticipated. Spread across the desk and arranged in neat chronological piles, the financial records told a story of stubborn resistance to change, followed by desperate, ill-advised attempts at diversification. 7 years ago, right around the time Jamie had started suggesting modernization, the business had shown the first serious signs of trouble. Quarterly profits had dipped, then plunged. Her father had responded by cutting costs rather than investing in new strategies. Staff had been reduced, marketing budgets slashed, inventory limited to the most reliable sellers. It had stemmed the bleeding temporarily, but accelerated the decline by making the store less competitive. 4 years ago, they'd leveraged the business to invest in commercial real estate, a strip mall on the edge of town, an office building downtown, and a small warehouse complex. The move had generated rental income, but added significant debt at high interest rates. When occupancy rates fell during the recession, the house of cards had begun to collapse. Jamie pushed back from the desk, rubbing her temples. The frustration wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. Every decision documented in these records confirmed what she'd tried to tell them years ago. If they had listened then, if they had been willing to adapt, find what you're looking for. Jamie startled. Her mother stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching her with an unreadable expression. I'm still working through it all, Jamie replied, gesturing to the organized chaos around her. But I have a clearer picture of the situation. Her mother entered the office, looking at the arrangement of papers with thinly veiled disapproval. Your father has a system, you know. Yes, I can see that. Everything from 2018 is stained with coffee, and everything from 2020 is filed under T for tax nightmare. Jamie hadn't meant to sound so sarcastic, but old habits died hard around her mother. To her surprise, her mother's mouth twitched in what might have been the ghost of a smile. He always did hate paperwork. An unexpected moment of connection. There and gone in an instant. These commercial property investments, Jamie said, tapping a folder. Whose idea was that? Her mother's posture stiffened. Your father had a vision for diversifying our assets. It was a huge risk, taking on that much debt while the core business was already struggling. We had to do something, her mother said defensively. The store wasn't supporting us anymore. There were other options. Less risky ones. Like what? Your online store idea? We didn't have the infrastructure or expertise for that. You could have developed it, Jamie countered. Hired someone with e-commerce experience. Reduced the physical footprint while expanding your market reach. Her mother's eyes flashed with familiar irritation. Easy for you to say from your high-rise office in Chicago. You weren't here dealing with the day-to-day reality, because you made it clear I wasn't welcome. The tension in the room thickened. Jamie took a deep breath, reminding herself that rehashing old arguments wouldn't help anyone. Look, what's done is done. I'm trying to understand how we got here so I can figure out if there's a way forward. Her mother seemed to deflate slightly. And is there a way forward? It's complicated. The debt is substantial, and the assets are underperforming. Best case scenario, you'll need to sell most of the commercial properties and dramatically restructure the business. And worst case? Jamie hesitated. Worst case, you lose everything and still have residual debt. Her mother absorbed this with surprising calmness. I see. I need to finish going through these records, and then I'll have a better sense of what options might be viable. Her mother nodded and turned to leave, then paused. Will you join us for dinner? I'm making pot roast. The invitation caught Jamie off guard. Pot roast had been her favorite growing up, a Sunday tradition in the Sullivan household. Was it coincidence or a deliberate choice? I should keep working, Jamie said. Maybe I can get takeout later. Of course. Her mother's voice was carefully neutral. Don't work too hard. After she left, Jamie returned to the records but found her concentration fractured. The familiar office, her mother's unexpected dinner invitation, the evidence of her parents' financial downfall, it all swirled together, making it difficult to maintain professional distance. In one of the boxes, beneath a stack of invoices, Jamie found something unexpected. A folder labeled Jamie's Suggestions. Inside were printouts of emails and documents she'd sent years ago, outlining modernization strategies for the business, her market analysis, her competitive research, her proposed timelines for implementation, all carefully preserved despite being ultimately rejected. They had kept her work. They had filed it away as if it mattered, even as they were cutting her out of family photos. Jamie closed the folder, unsettled by its existence. What was she supposed to make of this contradiction? Had they valued her professional input while rejecting her personal choices? Or was this just another box to check? Another system to satisfy her father's need for comprehensive records? As she reached for the next stack of documents, Jamie's hand bumped against a small plastic bin that had been partially hidden behind the desk. It tipped over, spilling its contents across the floor. Photographs, dozens of them, some framed, some loose, all with jagged edges or empty spaces where she had been carefully removed. Birthday parties with a Jamie-shaped hole next to the cake. Christmas mornings with presents addressed to no one. Family vacations with unbalanced compositions where someone should have been standing. Jamie picked one up. Her high school graduation. The original had shown her between her parents, holding her diploma. In this version, her parents stood unnaturally far apart, smiling at nothing. The methodical nature of her erasure hit her anew. This hadn't been a heat-of-the-moment decision after their fight. This had been an ongoing project, a deliberate unmaking of her place in family history. Jamie gathered the photos and returned them to the bin, her hands shaking slightly. She needed to focus on the financial issues, not the emotional ones. She was here as an advisor, not a daughter seeking reconciliation. But as she turned back to the desk, one last photo caught her eye, a business award ceremony from 10 years ago. Her father accepting a plaque from the Chamber of Commerce, her mother at his side. And there, partially cut out but still visible at the edge of the frame, was Jamie's hand on her father's shoulder. They hadn't been able to erase her completely after all. Jamie sat in her hotel room that evening, laptop open, a half-eaten sandwich from the deli across the street sitting forgotten on the bedside table. The numbers from Sullivan Furniture danced across her screen, each spreadsheet telling the same bleak story from a different angle. Her phone rang, displaying Maya's name. "How's the family reunion from hell?" Maya asked without preamble. "About as fun as a root canal," Jamie replied, grateful for her friend's voice. "The business is in worse shape than I thought. They've managed to turn a struggling furniture store into a financial disaster of epic proportions." "And how are they? Your parents?" Jamie hesitated. "Different. Older. My father seemed defeated. My mother is still my mother, just a more subdued version. Have they apologized? For what? Disowning me? Cutting me out of every family photo?" "No, Maya, they haven't apologized. They've barely acknowledged there was ever a problem. This is strictly business to them. And to you?" Maya's voice was gentle. "Is it strictly business to you too?" Jamie sighed, closing her laptop. "I wish it could be. That would make this so much easier." "So, What are you going to do? I don't know yet. I need more information. I'm going to talk to Ryan tomorrow. Your brother? I thought you said he wasn't involved. He's not, apparently. He left the business 2 years ago, moved to North Carolina, but he might have insights I need before making any decisions. Are you going to tell your parents you're contacting him? Jamie glanced at the notes she'd made after discovering Ryan's current contact information in the business records. No. This conversation needs to happen without their filtering. B. Careful, Jamie. You're diving back into complicated family dynamics without your usual emotional armor. I know. But I need to understand what happened after I left. Ryan was always the golden child, the loyal son. If he abandoned the family business too, something significant changed. After saying goodnight to Maya, Jamie stared at her brother's number for a long moment before dialing. It rang 4 times before a familiar voice answered. Sullivan. Ryan? It's Jamie. A long pause. Jamie? Wow. It's been a while. 5 years. Yeah. Another pause. How did you get this number? I'm in Oak Ridge. I'm looking through the business records. You're at home? Why? Jamie noted his choice of words. Home. As if it still was that for both of them. Dad reached out. They're losing the house. Foreclosure. Jesus. Ryan's voice lowered. I knew things were bad, but I didn't think they'd lose the house. You knew things were bad but didn't check on them? Jamie couldn't keep the accusation from her voice. It's complicated, Jame. The childhood nickname landed like a punch to the gut. No one had called her that in 5 years. Then uncomplicate it for me. Last I knew you were running operations. At the store, living the dream as the successor to the Sullivan Empire. Now you're in North Carolina, and our parents are facing financial ruin. Ryan sighed heavily. Look, can we video chat? This isn't a phone conversation. 10 minutes later, Jamie was looking at her brother's face on her laptop screen. Ryan had always been the image of their father. Same strong jawline, same confident bearing. Now she saw subtle changes. His hair was longer, his expression less certain. He looked like someone who had stepped out from under a long shadow and was still adjusting to the sunlight. So, Jamie began. What happened? Ryan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like their father that Jamie felt a pang of familiarity. After you left, things got intense. Dad was determined to prove the business could thrive without your big city ideas. He doubled down on traditional approaches, rejected anything that seemed too progressive. Mom backed him up, as always. And you? I tried to make it work. For 2 years, I put everything into that store. 60-hour weeks, no vacations, total commitment. But we kept losing ground to competitors. I started suggesting some of the same changes you had, carefully, without mentioning your name. Let me guess. They shot them down. Actually, no. By then, Dad was desperate enough to try anything. We launched a basic website, started some social media marketing, even experimented with virtual room design tools. So what went wrong? Ryan's expression darkened. It was too little, too late. And then I found out about the real estate deals, the commercial properties. Yeah, Dad made those investments without consulting me, even though I was supposedly being groomed to take over the company. He leveraged everything, Jamie. The store, the house, even the vacation property at the lake. When I confronted him, he said it was above my pay grade. Jamie winced. Their father's favorite dismissal when challenged. That must have been difficult. It was the wake-up call I needed. I realized I was following the same path you'd rejected, sacrificing my life for a business that wasn't even mine to control. So when a headhunter called about a product development position with Carolina Craftsman Furniture, I took it. Just like that? You just left? Ryan's jaw tightened. Not just like that. I gave 6 months' notice. I trained my replacement. I did everything right, but you still left. Yes, Jamie, I still left. Because staying would have destroyed me. Ryan leaned closer to the camera. You were right all along. The business model was outdated. Dad's leadership style was suffocating, and the family dynamic was toxic. It took me longer to see it, but I got there eventually. Jamie absorbed this, trying to reconcile the loyal brother she remembered with the man before her. How did they take it when you left? Dad didn't speak to me for 3 months. Mom called. Every Sunday like nothing had happened, never once mentioning the business. Classic Sullivan denial. And now, we're civil. I call once a month. I visit at Christmas. We talk about the weather and sports and avoid anything substantial. Ryan paused. They didn't tell me about the foreclosure. They probably didn't want to admit how bad things had gotten, or they didn't want to give me the satisfaction of being right. Ryan's bitterness was palpable even through the screen. So are you going to bail them out? The directness of the question caught Jamie off guard. I don't know yet. I'm still assessing the situation. They'll take your money, but not your advice. You know that, right? Maybe, maybe not. People change. Ryan's laugh was hollow. Not our parents. They'll find a way to blame everyone but themselves for this disaster. And if you help them, they'll resent you for it. Being the savior means acknowledging they needed saving. You sound angry. I'm not angry. I'm free. Ryan's expression softened. Look, Jamie, I know you've built a successful life. Whatever you decide, do it for the right reasons. Don't do it because you're still hoping for the approval they never gave you. The words hit close to home. Is that why you think I'm considering helping them? Isn't it? At least partly. Jamie didn't answer immediately. There's something else you should know. When I was going through the business records, I found a bin of family photos. Photos where I'd been cut out. Ryan looked away from the camera. Yeah, that was Mom's project after you left. She spent weeks on it. You knew about this? I didn't just know, Jamie. I helped her. The admission hung in the digital space between them. Not proudly, but I did. Jamie felt the betrayal anew. Why would you do that? Because I was angry too. You got out. You chose yourself. And I was left dealing with the fallout. Ryan met her gaze through the screen. I'm not proud of it, but that's the truth. Is there anything else I should know before I make my decision? Ryan hesitated. Just one thing. Dad has a gambling problem. Has for years. Mom covers for him, but it's gotten worse since I left. That might explain some of the financial holes you're finding. The revelation landed like a final piece in a puzzle Jamie hadn't known she was solving. That actually explains a lot. Be careful, Jamie. Whatever you decide, protect yourself first. After they disconnected, Jamie sat in the silence of her hotel room, Ryan's warnings echoing in her mind. Her brother had escaped the gravitational pull of Sullivan Furniture, of their parents' expectations. He'd found his own path, just as she had. But unlike her, he still maintained contact, however strained. He'd found middle ground where she had only seen scorched earth. The question was, could she do the same? And more importantly, should she? Armed with Ryan's revelation about their father's gambling, Jamie returned to Sullivan Furniture the next morning with renewed purpose. She arrived early, before the store opened, using the key her father had reluctantly provided. The empty showroom felt like a museum of obsolescence, quality craftsmanship overshadowed by dated designs and dusty displays. In the back office, Jamie began a more targeted investigation of the financial records. She created a separate spreadsheet tracking unusual cash withdrawals, unexplained expenses, and inconsistencies in the accounting. A pattern emerged quickly. Regular withdrawals, typically between $2,000 and $5,000, categorized vaguely as vendor relations or business development. The timing was suspicious too. Many withdrawals occurred on Fridays, with larger amounts around the first of each month. Over the past 3 years, these mysterious expenses had totaled nearly $175,000, enough to keep the business afloat during its downturn, or at least reduce the debt burden significantly. Jamie was so absorbed in her analysis that she didn't hear her father enter until he spoke. Finding everything you need? His voice carried forced casualness. Jamie minimized her spreadsheet window. Almost. I have a few questions about some recurring expenses. Anything specific? She decided on directness. These cash withdrawals for vendor relations, they've been happening regularly for years, but there's no corresponding documentation. No receipts, no contracts. Nothing to show what the money was used for. Her father's face remained impassive, but his right hand twitched slightly, a tell Jamie recognized from childhood games of poker. Those are relationship-building expenses, taking clients to dinner, entertaining potential partners. Small-town business runs on personal connections. $175,000 worth of dinners? Jamie kept her tone neutral. Her father's expression hardened. What exactly are you implying? I'm not implying anything. I'm trying to account for significant cash outflows that aren't properly documented. As a financial advisor, I can't ignore that. You're here to help with the foreclosure, not audit my business practices. The two are connected. If money was misused or misallocated, that affects the overall financial picture and any potential solutions. Her father stepped closer, lowering his voice even though they were alone. Some things don't need to appear in the official records. That doesn't make them wrong. Dad, Jamie said carefully, I spoke with Ryan last night. The change was immediate. Her father's face flushed, his posture stiffened. You had no right to involve your brother in this. He's family. This affects him too. Ryan abandoned the business when we needed him most, just like you did. Jamie kept her composure. He told me about your gambling. The accusation hung in the air between them. For a moment, Jamie thought her father might deny it, might storm out, might revert to the authoritarian parent who'd brook no questioning. Instead, his shoulders sagged, and he lowered himself into the chair across from her. It started small, he said quietly. A poker game with other business owners. A weekend in Atlantic City now and then. Nothing serious. When did it get serious? He stared at his hands. After you left. The business was struggling. I was stressed. It became an escape. $175,000 isn't an escape, Dad. It's an addiction. I always intended to win it back. To fix everything before anyone noticed. The familiar rationalization of the gambling addict. Jamie had seen it before in clients who'd hidden their habits. From spouses and business partners. Does Mom know? She suspects. We don't discuss it directly. He looked up, meeting Jamie's eyes for the first time. Are you going to tell her? I think this needs to be addressed openly if we're going to find a solution. Her father stood abruptly. I need some air. Jamie let him go, knowing that pushing further would only trigger more defensiveness. After he left, she returned to her analysis, now looking for evidence of attempts to cover up the gambling losses. She found several. Lines of credit opened and maxed out. Business inventory sold off without proper accounting. Even a small insurance claim that seemed suspiciously timed. The morning passed in a blur of spreadsheets and financial forensics. By noon, Jamie had assembled a comprehensive picture of the family's financial situation, and it was even worse than she'd initially thought. Between the failing business, the underwater real estate investments, and her father's gambling losses, they were facing nearly $1 million in debt, with rapidly depreciating assets as collateral. Her mother appeared at lunchtime with a sandwich, and iced tea. You missed breakfast, she said, setting the plate on the desk. You always did forget to eat when you were working. The casual observation, this unexpected acknowledgement of Jamie as a person with habits and history, caught her off guard. Thanks. Her mother lingered, glancing at the stacks of documents Jamie had organized. How bad is it? It's challenging. That's corporate speak for catastrophic. Her mother's perceptiveness hadn't dulled. Your father won't tell me the whole truth. He thinks he's protecting me. Jamie considered her options. Her father should be the one to confess his gambling addiction, but her mother deserved to know the full extent of their situation. There are significant issues beyond what you might be aware of, Jamie said carefully. The gambling. Her mother's voice was flat. That's what you're tiptoeing around, isn't it? Jamie stared at her. You know? Of course I know. I've been married to your father for 37 years. I know when he's lying, when money is disappearing, when he's hiding something. Her mother's composure cracked slightly. I know the signs of a man who's drowning but refuses to admit he's in water. Why didn't you say anything? Do anything? What would you have me do? Leave him? Abandon our marriage, our business, our home? Force him into treatment he doesn't want? Some problems don't have neat solutions, Jamie. So you just enabled it? I protected him. Protected us. Her mother sat down, suddenly looking every bit her age. You've always seen the world in black and white. Right decisions and wrong ones. But life is mostly gray, especially in a marriage. Jamie struggled to reconcile this revelation with her image of her mother, always proper, always in control. But the financial damage, I know exactly how much damage has been done. Her mother's eyes hardened. I've been moving money, hiding assets, trying to mitigate the worst of it for years. Why do you think your father never had access to my inheritance from Grandma Sullivan? I knew he'd gamble it away. Jamie felt as if the ground were shifting beneath her. Her mother, the same woman who'd cut her out of family photos, who'd stood by while her father issued ultimatums, had been waging a quiet battle to keep the family afloat. Why didn't you stop him from making those real estate investments? You must have known the risks. I tried. But your father was desperate to prove himself. To prove he could save the business without... She stopped abruptly. Without my help, Jamie finished for her. Without my big city ideas. Her mother didn't deny it. Pride has always been your father's weakness. And mine too, I suppose. Heavy silence fell between them. Jamie took a bite of the sandwich, buying time to process this new information. So all this time, she finally said, you've known everything that was happening and you just, what, pretended it wasn't? Cut. Me out of the family instead of addressing the real problems? We blamed you because it was easier than blaming ourselves. The admission seemed to cost her mother physical effort. When you left, when you succeeded without us, it was like looking in a mirror that showed everything we'd done wrong. Jamie set down her sandwich, appetite gone. And now? Now we're out of options. Out of time. Out of pride, finally. Her mother stood. I should let you work. Your father will be back soon. And he won't want to know we've had this conversation. Mom, Jamie called as her mother reached the door. Why did you keep my business proposals? I found them in the files. Her mother paused, hand on the doorknob. Because you were right. Because some part of me always knew you were right. She left without another word, leaving Jamie alone with a half-eaten sandwich, and the realization that the story of her family's downfall was far more complex than she'd imagined. Jamie needed perspective. Someone who knew the Sullivan family history but wasn't embroiled in the current crisis. Someone whose judgment wasn't clouded by resentment or desperation. As she drove through the familiar streets of Oak Ridge that afternoon, she found herself heading toward Sunny Pines retirement community without having consciously decided to go there. Grandmother Sullivan, Margaret to everyone else, but always Grandmother Sullivan in the formal Sullivan household, had moved to Sunny Pines 5 years ago after a minor stroke. Jamie had visited her regularly before the family schism, but had fallen out of touch after moving to Chicago. The guilt of that neglect settled heavily as she parked in the visitor's lot. The retirement community was cheerfully generic: beige walls, inspirational quotes, the faint smell of industrial cleaner masked by artificial floral scents. Jamie signed in at the front desk, where the receptionist brightened with recognition. Jamie Sullivan. It's been ages since we've seen you here. Hi, Mrs. Parker. Is my grandmother accepting visitors today? Margaret? Always. She's one of our most social residents. You'll find her in the community room. It's Bridge Day. Jamie followed the sound of elderly laughter down the hallway. The community room was bright with afternoon sunlight. Tables of card players scattered throughout. Her grandmother sat at a corner table, cards held close to her chest. A competitive gleam in her eye that age hadn't dimmed. Jamie waited until the hand finished before approaching. Her grandmother looked up, did a double take, then broke into a wide smile that transformed her face. Jamie Sullivan. Well, I'll be. She turned to her card partners. Ladies, this is my granddaughter, the financial wizard from Chicago. You'll excuse me while I catch up with her, won't you? No one at the table seemed to mind the interruption. Grandmother Sullivan rose with the help of a cane and led Jamie to a quiet sitting area by the windows. This is an unexpected pleasure, she said, settling into an armchair. To what do I owe the visit? Jamie hesitated. I'm in town dealing with some family business. Ah, understanding flashed in the older woman's eyes. The foreclosure. You know about that? Your father isn't as discreet as he thinks he is. Small town. Gossip still reaches even these hallowed halls of the elderly. She patted Jamie's hand. So they finally swallowed their pride and called you. You don't seem surprised. I'm not. I've been telling them for years they should reconcile with you. Stubborn, the both of them. Sullivan trait, I'm afraid. She winked. You've got a touch of it yourself. Jamie couldn't help smiling. Her grandmother had always seen through the family dynamics with clear-eyed precision. I'm trying to help them sort through the financial mess. But it's complicated. Because of the money or because of the history? Both. Grandmother Sullivan nodded sagely. History has a way of repeating itself in this family. Did you know your grandfather and his brother didn't speak for 20 years? I didn't. Jamie leaned forward, intrigued. Why not? The furniture store. Originally, it was a partnership. Sullivan Brothers Fine Furnishings. Your great-uncle Walter wanted to expand, open locations in other towns. Your grandfather thought it was too risky, wanted to focus on quality over quantity. What happened? They dissolved the partnership. Walter opened his own store 2 counties over. Your grandfather kept the original location. They competed fiercely, refused to attend the same family gatherings, even had separate holiday celebrations. She shook her head at the memory. Such a waste of precious time. How did it end? Walter's store went bankrupt during the recession in the 70s. Your grandfather bought the inventory at auction. A business decision, he claimed, though. We all knew it was his way of helping without admitting he was helping. They reconciled after that. But so many years were lost to pride. Jamie absorbed this piece of family history she'd never heard before. And Dad knows this story? Of course. But knowing history doesn't mean you learn from it. Grandmother Sullivan's eyes were shrewd. Your father has always been afraid of failure. It's what drives him, and what drives him to make poor decisions when he's desperate, like gambling. Her grandmother sighed. So you know about that too. I had hoped he'd gotten it under control. Did Grandpa have the same problem? No, but your great-grandfather did. Lost the family farm before your grandfather was born. It's why your grandfather was so conservative with money, so resistant to risk, and why your father swings between excessive caution and reckless gambling. The pendulum of reaction and counter-reaction. Insight resonated with Jamie. She'd rejected her parents' path so completely that she'd cut herself off from them entirely. Another extreme reaction in the family pattern. I don't know what to do, grandmother. Part of me wants to help them. But another part feels like they only reached out because they need my money, not because they want me back in their lives. And which matters more to you? Their motivations or the outcome? Jamie considered this. I want to do the right thing, but I don't want to be used. Then set your terms. Help on your conditions. Her grandmother's expression softened. But remember, reconciliation doesn't have to be all or nothing. There's room for boundaries within relationships. They talked for another hour, Grandmother Sullivan sharing family stories that provided context for the present crisis, tales of other estrangements, reconciliations, financial setbacks, and recoveries. The Sullivan family history was more cyclical than linear. Generations repeating patterns with slight variations. As they were saying goodbye, Grandmother Sullivan held Jamie's hand a moment longer. Before you go, there's something I want to show you. Can you help me to my apartment? Jamie accompanied her grandmother down the hallway to a small but comfortable apartment. On the bureau sat dozens of framed photos, a visual timeline of Sullivan family history. Look, her grandmother said, pointing to the most recent photos. You're still here, and she was. Unlike the edited photos at her parents' house, these showed Jamie at graduations, birthdays, holidays, fully present in the family narrative. Refused to cut you out, Grandmother Sullivan said firmly. When your mother tried to give me doctored photos, I told her I wasn't interested in fiction. Jamie felt a lump in her throat. Thank you for that. Family is family, Jamie. We don't have to approve of each other's choices to acknowledge our connection. She opened a drawer and removed a small album. Here, I want you to have this. The album contained photos Jamie had never seen. Her father as a young man, looking remarkably like Ryan. Her mother before marriage, carefree in a way Jamie couldn't. Reconcile with the rigid woman she knew. Her parents' wedding day, the opening of the first Sullivan Furniture expansion store. Baby photos of Jamie and Ryan. This is our true legacy, Grandmother Sullivan said. Not the business, not the house, not the name, just people, doing their imperfect best. Connected by blood and history and love, even when it's complicated. Jamie carefully closed the album. I'll bring it back before I leave town. Keep it. I have copies. Her grandmother's eyes twinkled. I've learned to back up the important things. On the drive back to her hotel, Jamie thought about cycles and patterns, about reactions and counter-reactions, about the long arc of family history that contained multitudes, conflict and reconciliation, distance and connection, mistakes and forgiveness. The Sullivan legacy wasn't the business her grandfather had built, or the home her parents might lose. It was this complicated web of relationships, this capacity for both tremendous hurt and profound healing. For the first time since receiving her father's text, Jamie felt clarity emerging from the emotional fog. She knew what she needed to do. Not just about the financial crisis, but about her place in the family story. It wouldn't be simple. It wouldn't erase the pain of the past 5 years. But perhaps it could break the cycle, interrupt the pattern that had repeated across generations. Perhaps it could begin to write a new chapter in the Sullivan family legacy. Jamie spent that evening in her hotel room, transforming financial analysis into actionable strategy. Her laptop screen glowed in the dimness as she built spreadsheets, ran projections, and outlined scenarios. Numbers had always been her refuge. Concrete, reliable, untainted by emotional complexity. At 9:37 p.m., her phone rang. Maya's name flashed on the screen. You're working late, Jamie answered, pressing the phone to her ear while continuing to type with her free hand. Says the woman who's clearly still working herself, Maya replied. How's Operation Family Rescue going? Jamie sighed, finally pausing, to lean back in her chair. It's complicated. I spent the day uncovering family secrets and generational patterns. Dad has a gambling problem that significantly contributed to their financial crisis. Mom's known about it all along, but enabled it rather than confronting it. And apparently this kind of dysfunction goes back generations. Wow, so much for the perfect Sullivan family image. Yeah, turns out we're just as messy as everyone else, we just hid it better. Jamie rubbed her eyes. Or I was just too blind to see it growing up. So what are you going to do? I'm working on a financial rescue plan, but it has to address the underlying issues or they'll just end up in the same situation again. And those issues being Dad's gambling, Mom's enabling, their refusal to modernize the business, their complete financial illiteracy despite running a company for decades. Jamie took a breath, and my own contribution to the dysfunction. Your contribution? Jamie, you were the one who got cut out of the family. Yes, but I also walked away completely. I made no attempt to reconcile, to understand their perspective, to find middle ground. I was so convinced I was right that I let 5 years pass without a single conversation. Maya was quiet for a moment. That's surprisingly self-aware. I had an enlightening visit with my grandmother today. The Sullivan family has a long history of estrangement and reconciliation. I'm trying to break the cycle, not perpetuate it. So you're definitely going to help them. Jamie looked at her laptop screen, at the plan taking shape there. Yes, but on my terms. This can't just be about money. It has to be about rebuilding the family on healthier foundations. I'm proud of you, Maya said softly. That's a mature perspective. Don't be too impressed. I haven't presented my conditions yet. They might tell me to take my plan and shove it. They won't. They need you too much. That's what worries me, Jamie admitted. I don't want them to accept my terms out of desperation, only to resent me. Later, this has to be a genuine reset. All you can do is offer. The rest is up to them. After ending the call, Jamie returned to her plan with renewed focus. By midnight, she had created a comprehensive proposal that addressed both the immediate financial crisis and the long-term sustainability of the family's finances. The plan required selling most of the commercial properties immediately to clear the most pressing debt. The furniture store would be downsized to a smaller location, with a significant investment in e-commerce capabilities. The family home would need to be sold, with a more modest house purchased outright to eliminate the mortgage burden. But the financial restructuring was only part of the solution. Jamie's conditions also included therapy for her father's gambling addiction, financial counseling for both parents, and regular family meetings to maintain transparency around money matters. Most critically, she would require a significant role in the business transition, not because she wanted to run Sullivan Furniture, but because her expertise was needed to ensure its survival in any form. Jamie knew her parents would balk at these conditions. They struck at the heart of her father's pride and her mother's need for control, but she also knew that without addressing the root causes, any financial bailout would be a temporary bandage on a hemorrhaging wound. The next morning, Jamie called her office in Chicago. As a senior financial advisor, she had considerable flexibility, but being away indefinitely would require formal arrangements. Caroline, I need to extend my personal leave, she told her assistant. Family situation is more complex than anticipated. Of course. How long do you think you'll need? Jamie hesitated. At least 2 weeks, possibly a month. I'll need to work remotely after this week. I'll notify HR and reschedule your clients. The Henderson account just finalized, by the way. Commission should hit your account by Friday. The Henderson commission, a 6-figure sum that would normally have Jamie celebrating, now represented something different. The means to help her family without compromising her own financial security. After handling work matters, Jamie called 3 former colleagues who had expertise she needed: a real estate consultant who specialized in distressed properties, a business restructuring expert, and a therapist who worked with gambling addiction. Mark, I need an assessment of commercial property values in Oak Ridge, Pennsylvania, she told the real estate consultant. 3 properties, all underwater on their mortgages, need to sell quickly, but not at fire sale prices, to the business expert. Sophia, I'm dealing with a family furniture business that needs radical restructuring. Established, good reputation, but completely analog in a digital world, looking for case studies of similar transformations. And finally, to the therapist. Dr. Winters, I need resources for gambling addiction treatment in rural Pennsylvania, specifically for an older man who hasn't acknowledged his addiction and whose wife has been enabling it for years. By noon, Jamie had assembled a support team, gathered preliminary advice, and refined her proposal. The plan was sound from a financial perspective. Whether it would be emotionally acceptable to her parents remained to be seen. Before heading to her parents' house, Jamie made one final call to Ryan. "I'm presenting a rescue plan today," she told her brother. "It's comprehensive but conditional. If they accept, I'll be in Oak Ridge for at least a month, possibly longer." "What are your conditions?" Ryan asked. "Treatment for Dad's gambling, financial transparency, sale of most assets, including the house, and my direct involvement in restructuring what remains of the business." Ryan whistled low. "They'll never go for it. Especially Mom. The house is her pride and joy. They don't have much choice. It's this, or bankruptcy. Even so, be prepared for resistance. They might prefer bankruptcy to admitting they need that level of help. Would you," Jamie hesitated, "would you consider coming back, just for a weekend? If they agree to the plan, having both of us involved might help ease the transition." Silence stretched over the line. "I don't know, Jame. That's asking a lot." "I know. Just think about it." After they hung up, Jamie gathered her materials, the financial analysis, the proposal documents, the preliminary recommendations from her experts. She'd prepared as thoroughly as she would for any high-stakes client meeting. But these weren't clients. They were her parents, and the stakes weren't just financial solvency, but the possibility of healing a broken family. As Jamie drove to her childhood home, she steeled herself for what promised to be the most challenging presentation of her career. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. "We blamed you because it was easier than blaming ourselves." Today, there would be no more blame, no more evasion, no more denial. Today, they would all face the truth together, about the money, about the past, about the future. Whether the Sullivan family could be saved remained to be seen, but for the first time in 5 years, Jamie was willing to try. Jamie arranged her documents on the dining room table, the same table where, 5 years earlier, she'd announced her decision to take the job in Chicago. The symmetry wasn't lost on her as she waited for her parents to join her. They entered together, her father looking wary, her mother's face carefully composed into neutrality. The tension in the room was palpable as they took seats across from her. "Thank you for meeting with me," Jamie began, her professional voice masking her nerves. "I've completed my analysis of your financial situation and developed a proposed plan of action." Her father nodded. "We appreciate your thoroughness." Jamie glanced between them. "Before I present my recommendations, I want to be clear about something. This isn't just about money. The financial problems are symptoms of deeper issues that need to be addressed for any solution to be sustainable." Her mother's posture stiffened. "Meaning? Meaning that I'm prepared to help, but I have conditions." Jamie met their gazes directly. "I'm not interested in a temporary fix that leaves the underlying problems intact." Her father's jaw tightened. "What kind of conditions?" "I'll get to that. First, let me outline the financial situation as I understand it." Jamie opened her laptop and turned it so they could see the screen. "You're facing approximately $973,000 in total debt, $425,000 on the house mortgage, $372,000 on the commercial properties, $98,000 in business loans, and $78,000 in personal credit card debt." She clicked to the next slide. "Your assets include this house, valued at approximately $350,000 in today's market, the commercial properties, which are all underwater but could sell for about $280,000 total, the business inventory and equipment, worth around $120,000, and personal assets of roughly $50,000. Her father winced at these figures. "The properties were appraised much higher when we purchased them. The market has changed significantly," Jamie acknowledged. "Unfortunately, that leaves you with assets of approximately $800,000 against nearly $1 million in debt, with negative cash flow that's worsening each month." She paused to let the reality sink in. Her mother's face had paled, though Jamie suspected this wasn't news to her. Without intervention, foreclosure on the house is inevitable, followed by business bankruptcy. You'd still be left with significant personal debt even after liquidation. "We understand the severity," her father said, an edge to his voice. "What's your proposed solution?" Jamie took a deep breath. "A comprehensive restructuring of your finances, business operations, and," she hesitated, "personal habits." Her father's eyes narrowed at the last point, but he remained silent. "First, we need to address the immediate crisis, the house foreclosure. I'm prepared to provide a loan of $425,000 to clear the mortgage debt." Her parents exchanged glances of surprise and relief. However, Jamie continued before they could speak. "This isn't a gift. It's a structured loan with terms that protect all parties." She distributed copies of a document she'd prepared. The loan would be secured against the business assets and repaid through profit sharing once the business returns to profitability. If the business fails completely, the loan converts to equity in any remaining assets. Her father frowned as he scanned the document. "These terms are quite stringent. They're fair and reflect the high-risk nature of the loan," Jamie replied, evenly. "No conventional lender would offer better terms given your current financial position." "And the other conditions you mentioned?" her mother asked. Jamie clicked to the next slide. "The loan is contingent on implementing a complete financial recovery plan, which includes the following steps." She outlined each point methodically. 1. Sale of all commercial properties immediately to eliminate that debt burden. 2. Downsizing the furniture store to a smaller location with significantly reduced overhead. 3. Investment in e-commerce. Capabilities to expand market reach beyond Oak Ridge. 4. Sale of this house and purchase of a more modest property, mortgage-free. 5. Development of a strict personal budget with financial counseling for at least 12 months. Her parents listened with increasing discomfort as Jamie continued to the most difficult conditions. 6. Treatment for gambling addiction. She looked directly at her father, whose face had reddened. "This is non-negotiable. The financial plan will fail if this issue isn't addressed." Her mother reached for her husband's hand as Jamie delivered the final condition. 7. I will oversee the business restructuring personally, which means I'll need to be in Oak Ridge and involved in day-to-day operations for at least 3 months. Silence fell over the dining room as Jamie finished her presentation. She waited, allowing her parents time to process everything she'd proposed. Her father spoke first, his voice tight. "You're essentially asking us to surrender control of our lives. Our business, our home, our privacy, all of it handed over to you. I'm asking you to accept help on terms that have a realistic chance of success," Jamie countered. "This isn't about control. It's about accountability." "It feels like punishment," her mother said quietly. Jamie hadn't expected that response, and it caught her off guard. "It's not meant to be punishment. It's meant to be a path forward, a path that requires us to admit we've failed completely, that we need our daughter to save us from our own mistakes." Her mother's voice held a bitterness that cut through Jamie's professional facade. "Mom, this isn't about failure or blame. Financial difficulties happen to many people, especially small business owners in changing markets, but not the gambling," her father interjected. "That's what you're really focusing on, isn't it? You want me to admit I have a problem, to sit in some circle of strangers and confess my sins." Jamie took a steadying breath. "Dad, the gambling has cost you at least $175,000 over the past 3 years. That alone could have prevented the current crisis. It's not about confession or punishment. It's about addressing a behavior that will undermine any financial recovery if it continues." Her parents exchanged another look, one of those silent communications that Jamie had never been part of. "We need time to discuss this privately," her mother finally said. "Of course." Jamie gathered her materials. "Take whatever time you need. But remember, the foreclosure clock is ticking. We have less than 3 weeks to stop it." She stood to leave, but her father's voice stopped her. "Why are you doing this, Jamie? After 5 years of silence, after the way things ended between us, why would you go to all this trouble?" The question hung in the air, weighted with unspoken history. Jamie considered her answer carefully. "Because we're family," she said simply, "and because I believe we can do better than we've done so far." Her father nodded slowly, something shifting in his expression. "We'll let you know our decision tomorrow. One more thing," Jamie said as she reached the dining room doorway. "I've spoken with Ryan. If you accept this plan, he's considering coming back for a weekend to help with the transition." She saw hope flicker across her mother's face. "He'd do that?" "He might. We're both trying to break old patterns." After Jamie left, she drove to a local coffee shop to decompress. The meeting had gone almost exactly as she'd expected. Initial shock, resistance, defensiveness, particularly around the gambling issue. But there had been something else, too. A moment near the end when her father had asked why she was helping them. In his eyes, she'd glimpsed not just pride or anger, but genuine puzzlement, as if her willingness to help after their rejection was incomprehensible to him. Her phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "How did it go?" Jamie typed back. "About as expected. Lots of resistance. They're discussing." Maya replied immediately. "They'll say yes. They have no choice." But they did have a choice, Jamie realized. They could reject her help, lose the house and business, declare bankruptcy, all to maintain the illusion of control and avoid confronting the deeper issues. For some people, pride was worth any price. The question was whether her parents' pride would outweigh their desperate situation, and whether, after 5 years of estrangement, they could trust her enough to accept help on her terms. Jamie sipped her coffee and waited, knowing that whatever their decision, the Sullivan family would never be the same again. Jamie expected to hear from her parents the next day. When no call came, she gave them space, understanding that accepting her conditions meant confronting decades of pride and denial. On the third day, her father finally called, asking her to come to the house. That evening, "We've made our decision," he said, his voice giving nothing away. The atmosphere in the living room was different this time. Less hostile, more resigned. Her parents sat side by side on the sofa, a united front despite the tension visible in their postures. "We've decided to accept your help," her father began, the words clearly difficult for him. "With some modifications to your conditions." Jamie nodded, waiting for him to continue. "I'll agree to speak with someone about the—" He hesitated, still unable to say the word gambling, "about my financial habits, but I'm not comfortable with formal addiction treatment." "Dad, let me finish. I'll work with a financial counselor who has experience with gambling issues. That's my compromise." Jamie considered this. Not ideal, but potentially workable if the counselor was appropriately qualified. "What other modifications?" Her mother spoke up. "We agree to selling the commercial properties and downsizing the store, but we want to explore alternatives to selling this house. It's been in the family for generations, I know." Jamie kept her voice gentle. "But Mom, the mortgage is underwater. Even if we clear it, maintaining this house will strain your reduced income. There must be some way to keep it." Her mother's voice held a rare note of pleading. "This is where we raised our children, where we built our life." Jamie recognized that this wasn't just about property. It was about identity, about her mother's sense of place in the world. "I'll look into alternatives," she promised. "But I can't guarantee anything." Her father nodded. "And regarding your involvement in the business restructuring, we appreciate your expertise, but I need to maintain final decision-making authority. This is still Sullivan Furniture." Jamie had anticipated this sticking point. "I'm not trying to take over, Dad, but if I'm providing the financial backing, I need sufficient input to ensure the plan succeeds. How about this? Major decisions require mutual agreement. If we reach an impasse, we bring in a neutral third party to mediate." Her father considered this, then nodded reluctantly. "That's acceptable." "Good." Jamie felt a cautious optimism. "Then we have a framework to move forward. I'll revise the formal agreement and—" "One more thing," her mother interrupted. "This arrangement stays private. No one in town needs to know the details of our financial situation or that you're rescuing us." Pride again. The Sullivan family trademark. "The business restructuring will be visible to everyone, Mom. People will ask questions. Then we'll say you've decided to rejoin the family business, that you're bringing your expertise back home where it belongs." Her mother's gaze was steady. A homecoming, not a rescue. Jamie bit back her initial response, that she had no intention of permanently rejoining the business. This wasn't the moment to challenge the narrative her mother needed to maintain her dignity. "All right, we can frame it that way publicly." She stood. "I'll make the revisions and bring the paperwork tomorrow. Once it's signed, I'll initiate the loan to stop the foreclosure." Her parents walked her to the door, the atmosphere still strained but less adversarial than before. As Jamie was leaving, her father cleared his throat awkwardly. We appreciate this, Jamie. I know our relationship hasn't been, well, it hasn't existed for some time. This can't be easy for you either." It was the closest thing to an acknowledgement of their estrangement that he'd offered since her return. Jamie nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The next day, Jamie arrived with revised agreements, expecting a straightforward signing process. Instead, she found her mother alone, a strange energy radiating from her. "Dad's at the store," her mother explained. "He asked me to review the paperwork first." Something in her tone put Jamie on alert. "Of course, take your time." Her mother led her to the kitchen table rather than the formal dining room. It was an unexpected change. The kitchen had always been her mother's domain, the heart of her authority in the household. "Coffee," she offered, already pouring a cup without waiting for Jamie's response. "Thank you." Jamie set the documents on the table, watching as her mother busied herself with unnecessary preparations, straightening napkins, adjusting the sugar bowl, small rituals that Jamie recognized as stalling tactics. "Is everything okay, Mom?" Her mother finally sat down, hands wrapped around her coffee mug. "I've been thinking about this arrangement, about what it means for our family. And I'm concerned that once you have this level of control over our finances, over the business, what's to stop you from using it against us?" Jamie blinked, caught off guard by the direct accusation. "Why would I do that? People change when they have power over others, even family." Her mother's gaze was challenging. "You might decide we're not moving quickly enough, or not following your plan precisely enough. You might decide to punish us for the past." "Mom, that's not— We hurt you, I know that. We cut you out when you chose a different path. That kind of hurt doesn't just disappear because of a financial arrangement." The blunt acknowledgement of the estrangement, something her parents had been dancing around since her return, momentarily silenced Jamie. "You're right," she finally said. "That hurt doesn't just disappear, but this isn't about punishment or revenge. If I wanted to hurt you, I could simply have ignored Dad's text." Her mother studied her, searching for something in Jamie's expression. Whatever she found seemed to both satisfy and disturb her. "I believe you mean that now, but feelings change. Resentments surface. If you don't trust me, then maybe we shouldn't do this at all." "It's not that simple." Her mother sighed, suddenly looking tired. "We need your help. We just don't want to trade one crisis for another." Jamie considered her response carefully. "What would make you feel more secure about this arrangement?" The question seemed to surprise her mother. I don't know. Some assurance that you won't change the terms once we've started, that you won't use this as leverage to make us accept your version of the past. We can add clauses to the agreement, provisions that protect both sides from changing circumstances or emotional decisions." Jamie leaned forward. "Mom, I'm trying to help, not control. If we can't establish basic trust, this won't work regardless of what's on paper." Her mother was silent for a long moment. "I went to your room yesterday, after you left." The non sequitur caught Jamie off guard. "My room?" "Yes. It's mostly as you left it. I pack up your seasonal clothes sometimes, dust the shelves, but otherwise, it's the same." Jamie hadn't been to her old bedroom since returning to Oak Ridge, hadn't even asked about it. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because even when I was cutting you out of photos, I couldn't bring myself to change your room. Even when I was angriest, some part of me kept it ready, just in case." Her mother's voice caught slightly. "I don't know what that means exactly, but I thought you should know." The revelation hung between them, an admission of contradiction, of the complex emotions beneath her mother's rigid exterior. Before Jamie could respond, they heard the front door open. "Elizabeth?" her father called. "Is Jamie here yet?" The moment of vulnerability vanished as her mother composed herself. "In the kitchen, Daniel." Her father joined them, briefcase in hand. "All business. Sorry I'm late. Customer issue at the store." As they reviewed the revised agreement, Jamie watched her mother carefully. Something had shifted during their conversation. Not a resolution, but an acknowledgement of the deeper currents beneath the financial negotiations. When the paperwork was finally signed, her father shook her hand. Formally, "We have a deal then. We have a start," Jamie corrected gently. "The paperwork is just the beginning." Later that evening, as Jamie was reviewing property listings at her hotel, she received a text from Ryan. "Dad called, said you reached an agreement. Is that true?" Jamie replied, "Yes. Not perfect, but workable. Still some resistance to the gambling treatment and selling the house." Ryan's response came quickly. "Mom will be the bigger challenge. Watch your back." Before Jamie could ask what he meant, another text arrived. "She'll agree to everything publicly, but undermine what she doesn't like privately. Always has." The warning resonated with Jamie's earlier interaction with her mother. The strange energy, the pointed questions about control and trust, the sudden vulnerability followed by composed formality. Jamie texted back, already seeing signs of that. "Any advice?" Ryan's response was simple. "Document everything, and don't take it personally." Easy to say, harder to practice. Despite her professional experience with difficult clients, despite her determination to maintain emotional boundaries, Jamie couldn't help taking her mother's resistance personally. This wasn't just any financial rescue. It was her family, her history, her own unresolved pain. As she turned off her phone that night, Jamie knew the signed agreement was just the first skirmish in what promised to be a long campaign. The real challenges, and the real healing, still lay ahead. A week into implementing the financial rescue plan, Jamie realized they needed help beyond spreadsheets and restructuring strategies. The paperwork had been signed, the foreclosure halted with her loan, and the commercial properties listed for sale. But beneath the surface, tension simmered. Her father's defensive reactions whenever gambling was mentioned, her mother's passive resistance to change, Jamie's own struggle to maintain professional distance. "We need intervention," she told Maya during their nightly phone call. "The financial plan is solid, but the family dynamics are sabotaging it at every turn." "What kind of intervention are you thinking?" Maya asked. Her voice sounded clearer than usual, less distant. "I'm not sure. Family therapy, maybe? Some neutral third party who can help us communicate without falling into old patterns." "That sounds remarkably self-aware for a Sullivan," Maya teased. "Speaking of which, I have a surprise for you." "What kind of surprise?" "Look out your hotel window." Jamie crossed to the window and pulled back the curtain. In the parking lot below stood Maya, phone to her ear, waving up at her. "What are you doing here?" Jamie exclaimed. "Being a good friend. You sounded like you needed backup, so I took a few days off. Thought I might be useful. Child psychologist, family dynamics expert, professional Jamie whisperer." 15 minutes later, they were hugging in Jamie's hotel room, the familiar presence of her friend already easing some of Jamie's tension. "Seriously, thank you for coming," Jamie said. "This has been even harder than I expected." Maya settled into the room's single armchair. "Tell me everything, and I mean the emotional stuff, not just the financial details you've been hiding behind." Jamie poured them both glasses of the wine Maya had brought and spent the next hour detailing the complex web of resentments, denials, and painful histories she'd been navigating. "So let me get this straight," Maya said when Jamie finished. "Your dad's gambling away the family fortune while refusing to admit he has a problem. Your mom's secretly sabotaging your rescue efforts while maintaining a perfect public facade. And you're trying to save them financially while pretending you're not still hurt by their rejection. That about sums it up. And you're surprised this isn't going smoothly?" Maya raised an eyebrow. "Jamie, you need more than financial agreements. You need to address the emotional bankruptcy in this family." "That's what I've been saying. But how? They barely acknowledge the estrangement, let alone the deeper issues." Maya considered this. "What if I facilitate a family meeting? Not as a therapist, they'd never agree to that, but as your friend who happens to have professional expertise in family dynamics? You do that?" "Of course. I've been hearing about the Sullivan family drama for 15 years. I'm practically a member, by proxy." The next morning, Jamie approached her parents with Maya's offer, carefully framing it as a business mediation rather than therapy. "Maya works with families professionally," she explained over breakfast at their house. "She could help us establish better communication protocols for the business restructuring." Her mother looked skeptical. "We don't need an outsider involved in family matters. This isn't just family, Mom. It's business. And right now, the business is suffering because we can't have a conversation without decades of baggage getting in the way." Her father surprised her by nodding slowly. "Your mother and I had a long talk last night. We recognize that things aren't progressing as they should." Jamie tried to hide her shock at this unexpected acknowledgement. "So you'd be willing to meet with Maya? If it helps move this process forward, yes." He glanced at her mother, who gave a tight nod of agreement. Maya arrived that afternoon, carrying a professional portfolio and dressed in what Jamie recognized as her work clothes, a blazer over a simple blouse, subtle jewelry, an air of composed authority. She greeted Jamie's parents warmly but formally, establishing herself immediately as neither friend nor foe, but as a neutral professional. They gathered in the living room, the formal setting lending gravity to the occasion. Maya began by outlining ground rules. One person speaks at a time, no interrupting. Focus on feelings rather than accusations. Use I statements instead of you statements. These might seem basic, she acknowledged, but they create a framework for productive communication, especially when emotions run high. Jamie watched her parents' reactions, her father looking uncomfortable but resigned, her mother maintaining perfect posture and a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Let's start with a simple exercise," Maya suggested. "Each person will share one hope and one fear about the current situation. No responses or rebuttals, Just listening. Who would like to begin? After a moment of awkward silence, Jamie's father cleared his throat. I suppose I can start. My hope is that we can save enough of the business to preserve the Sullivan name in the community. My fear is that we've waited too long, that the damage is irreparable. Maya nodded encouragingly. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Mrs. Sullivan? Her mother's hands were clasped tightly in her lap. My hope is that our family can emerge from this crisis intact. My fear is that the process will force us to give up everything that matters. Our home, our privacy, our dignity. The naked vulnerability in her mother's statement caught Jamie by surprise. She'd expected deflection or platitudes, not this direct acknowledgement of what was at stake emotionally. Jamie? Maya prompted gently. Jamie took a deep breath. My hope is that we can build a healthier relationship moving forward. One based on honesty, rather than appearances. My fear is that even if we solve the financial problems, we'll never address the reasons we became estranged in the first place. The words hung in the air, the first direct reference to the 5-year silence that had preceded this crisis. Jamie could feel her heart pounding as she waited for her parents' reaction. Thank you all for your honesty, Maya said, filling the tense silence. Now I'd like each of you to respond to what you heard from the others, not to challenge or defend, but to acknowledge what resonated with you. Her father shifted uncomfortably. I understand Jamie's concern about honesty. The Sullivan family has always valued privacy, sometimes to our detriment. We keep things within the family, or at least, that was the intention. Until you cut me out of the family, Jamie said, the words escaping before she could stop them. Her mother flinched visibly. That's not what Let's pause. Maya interjected smoothly. Jamie, can you rephrase that using an I statement? Jamie took a steadying breath. I felt rejected and erased when I was cut out of family photos and events, like I no longer existed because I chose a different career path. Her mother's carefully maintained composure cracked slightly. We never stopped considering you family, Jamie. We were hurt and disappointed, yes. We handled it poorly, but you were always our daughter. Then why? Jamie began, but Maya gently raised a hand. One moment, Jamie. Mrs. Sullivan, can you elaborate on what you mean when you say Jamie was always family despite the estrangement? Her mother looked down at her clasped hands. We talked about Jamie, followed her career from a distance. Daniel has a file of newspaper clippings and online articles about her achievements. She glanced at her husband, who looked away, embarrassed by this revelation. We were proud, even while we were angry. Jamie felt something catch in her throat. You kept track of me? Her father nodded reluctantly. The Chicago financial community isn't that large. Word gets around when someone rises quickly. We always knew you would succeed. Then why cut me out of photos? Why tell relatives I was too busy to attend family functions? Jamie fought to keep her voice steady. Because looking at those photos hurt too much, her mother admitted quietly. Because we couldn't bear the questions about when you were coming home. Because acknowledging your absence meant acknowledging our failure as parents. The raw honesty of the admission stunned Jamie into silence. Maya stepped in gently. This is an important moment. You're beginning to address the emotional roots of the estrangement, which need healing alongside the financial issues. For the next hour, Maya guided them through a structured conversation, stopping when defenses rose, redirecting when old patterns emerged, creating space for painful truths to be spoken and heard. It wasn't therapy, exactly, but it was perhaps the most honest conversation the Sullivan family had ever had. By the end, all three were emotionally exhausted. Nothing had been resolved completely, but something had shifted. A crack in the wall of silence and pretense that had defined their relationship for years. This is just a beginning, Maya reminded them as the session concluded. Healing family relationships takes time and consistent effort, just like rebuilding a business. As they walked Maya to her car, Jamie's father surprised her by saying, We'd like to continue these discussions, if you're willing. Maya glanced at Jamie, who nodded slightly. I'd be happy to facilitate whenever I'm in town, and I can recommend someone local for more regular sessions. It wasn't a miracle cure. The fundamental issues remained. Her father's gambling, her mother's resistance to change, the years of estrangement. But for the first time, these issues had been named aloud, acknowledged as real, rather than hidden beneath layers of denial and pretense. It was a start. And sometimes, Jamie reflected as she watched her parents return to the house, a start was the hardest part of any journey. 2 weeks after Maya's intervention, the first commercial property sold, the small warehouse complex on the edge of town. The price was lower than they'd hoped, but still sufficient to clear that portion of debt and provide a small cushion for the business restructuring. Jamie presented the closing documents to her parents at what had become their regular morning meeting at the store. "The warehouse sale is final," she announced, sliding the paperwork across the desk in her father's office. "After closing costs and paying off that mortgage, we've netted $37,000. Her father reviewed the documents, his expression carefully neutral. "Better than nothing." "It's actually better than we projected," Jamie corrected gently. The market assessment had it selling for less. Her mother, who now attended all business meetings despite having historically remained in the background, asked, "What about the other properties?" "We have 2 interested buyers for the strip mall. The downtown office building is proving more challenging, but we have an upcoming showing with a potential investor." The conversation continued professionally, without the emotional undercurrents that had dominated earlier discussions. Maya's session had created space for them to work together more effectively, even if personal wounds were still healing. "Now we need to discuss the store downsizing," Jamie said, moving to the next item on her agenda. "I've identified 3 potential locations, each about half the current square footage with significantly lower overhead." Her father's jaw tightened. "Half the square footage means half the inventory." "Yes, but a more carefully curated selection targeted at our most profitable market segments," Jamie countered. "Quality over quantity. Sullivan Furniture has always been about offering comprehensive home furnishing solutions," her father argued, slipping into sales jargon. "Limiting our inventory undermines our brand identity." Jamie had anticipated this resistance. "Dad, our financials show that 80% of revenue comes from 30% of inventory. We're investing significant resources in products that rarely sell. Those products attract customers who end up buying other items. That assumption isn't supported by the sales data." Jamie kept her tone respectful but firm. "We've been operating on gut feeling rather than analytics. That worked in an earlier era, but not in today's competitive market." Her father leaned back, frustration evident in his posture. "So we abandon our heritage to chase trends. It's not about trends, it's about sustainability." Jamie softened her approach. "Look, I understand this is difficult. The store has been your life's work, but adaptation doesn't mean abandonment." Her mother, who had been listening silently, surprised them both by saying, "What if we compromise? Both?" Jamie and her father turned to her. "We could maintain a smaller selection of the legacy pieces, the craftsman-style furniture that's been our signature, while updating the rest of the inventory to reflect current market preferences." She looked between them. A bridge between tradition and innovation. Jamie considered this. That could work, especially if we position the legacy pieces as premium, custom options. It would preserve the craftsmanship story while allowing more flexibility with the rest of the inventory. Her father seemed caught off guard by her mother's suggestion. "You've never involved yourself in inventory decisions before. Perhaps I should have," she replied simply. "The world is changing. We need to change with it." Jamie watched this exchange with interest. Her mother's intervention, practical, forward-looking, yet respectful of tradition, had diffused the brewing conflict. It was a small moment, but significant in the shifting family dynamics. "I think Mom's suggestion makes sense," Jamie said. "We can run the numbers on a hybrid model like that and see if it's viable." Her father nodded slowly. "I'd be open to seeing those projections. Progress," Jamie thought. Small, incremental, but real. After the morning meeting, Jamie stayed at the store to work on the e-commerce implementation while her parents went to meet with the financial counselor. Her father had resisted formal gambling addiction treatment, but had agreed to sessions with a financial therapist who specialized in compulsive spending behaviors. It wasn't everything Jamie had hoped for, but it was a step in the right direction. As she worked in the office, cataloging inventory for the online store, Jamie found herself surrounded by the physical artifacts of Sullivan Furniture history. Old catalogs, yellowing newspaper advertisements, framed photos of store openings and industry awards. The business wasn't just a source of income for her parents. It was their identity, their legacy, the tangible representation of their life's work. No wonder they had reacted so strongly to her departure, to her rejection of this path, and no wonder the necessary downsizing felt like personal failure to her father. This realization helped Jamie adjust her approach. When her parents returned from their counseling session, she presented a modified plan that framed the store's evolution as a strategic adaptation rather than a retreat. "I've been thinking about Mom's hybrid model," she began, spreading out mock-ups of a redesigned showroom. What if we position the downsizing as an intentional refinement? The smaller space becomes an advantage, a carefully curated collection, showcasing the best of Sullivan craftsmanship. Her father studied the mock-ups with interest. A boutique approach, exactly. Higher margins on fewer pieces, supplemented by the expanded online presence. The physical store becomes a showcase, while the e-commerce platform provides the volume. Her mother picked up one of the design sketches. This could work. It's different, but it honors our heritage. I've projected the financials for this model, Jamie continued, presenting a spreadsheet. It's actually more sustainable long-term than I initially thought. The premium positioning allows for better margins, which offset the reduced square footage. Her father reviewed the numbers, his expertise in retail still evident despite the business's struggles. These projections assume we can maintain the higher price points in a smaller location. Yes, but I believe we can if we execute the transition properly. The key is controlling the narrative. This isn't Sullivan Furniture scaling back. It's Sullivan Furniture refining its focus on craftsmanship and quality. The strategy appealed to her father's pride while addressing the financial realities. After further discussion, they reached agreement on the downsizing plan with modifications that incorporated elements important to both generations. Later that afternoon, as they toured potential new locations for the store, Jamie noticed a shift in her parents' engagement. Rather than resisting change, they were beginning to envision possibilities. Her father evaluated each space with a critical eye toward how their showcase pieces would display. Her mother suggested layout improvements that would enhance the customer experience. At the third location, a renovated historic building with exposed brick walls and high ceilings, her father paused in the center of the empty space. This could work, he said, gesturing around him. The character of the building complements our traditional pieces, and the downtown location would attract the right clientele for the premium positioning. Jamie felt a surge of hope. It's also the most affordable option of the three, with the most flexible lease terms. Her mother walked the perimeter, assessing the natural light from tall windows. We could create vignettes here, showcase complete room designs rather than just individual pieces. That's exactly what I was thinking, Jamie agreed. More experiential, less warehouse. As they continued discussing possibilities, Jamie realized they were collaborating as equals for perhaps the first time. Her business expertise and their industry knowledge complementing rather than competing with each other. On the drive back to the house, her father said unexpectedly, "You would have made a good furniture retailer, you know, if things had been different." Jamie glanced at him, surprised by the compliment. "Maybe, but I think I'm a better financial advisor because I understand retail from growing up in it. Perhaps." He kept his eyes on the road. "In any case, your expertise is valuable. I should have recognized that sooner." It wasn't an apology for the ultimatum 5 years ago, for the estrangement that followed, but it was an acknowledgement of her worth, of the validity of her path. From her father, that was significant. That evening, as they reviewed their progress over dinner, Jamie raised the issue they'd been avoiding. "The house. We need to discuss next steps regarding the property," she said carefully. "The loan has stopped the foreclosure, but we still need a permanent solution." Her mother set down her fork. "I've been thinking about that. I know keeping this house isn't financially sensible." Jamie waited, surprised by this concession. "But before we list it," her mother continued, "I'd like to explore one alternative. My sister Anne in Philadelphia has offered to invest in the business. If her contribution is significant enough, perhaps we could refinance the house at a manageable level." Jamie hadn't known about this potential investment. "When did Aunt Anne make this offer?" "Yesterday. I called her after our meeting with the financial counselor." Her mother looked slightly defensive. "I know I should have mentioned it immediately, but I wanted to confirm her seriousness first." Jamie nodded, processing this new information. "It's a possibility worth exploring, but we'd need to be clear about the terms of her investment and how it fits into the overall restructuring plan." "Of course," her mother agreed quickly. "I thought perhaps you could speak with her directly, advisor to investor." The suggestion that Jamie engage professionally with extended family on her parents' behalf signaled another shift in their relationship. They were beginning to trust her expertise, to see her as an ally rather than an adversary. "I'd be happy to discuss options with Aunt Anne," Jamie said, "but I want to be clear. Even with her investment, keeping this house might not be the most financially sound decision." "I understand that," her mother replied, "but if there's a way to preserve some part of our legacy while still moving forward, Isn't that worth exploring? Jamie recognized the compromise being offered, her mother acknowledging the need for change while asking for flexibility on this one deeply personal issue. Yes, Jamie agreed. That's worth exploring. It wasn't the straightforward solution Jamie had initially envisioned, but perhaps, she reflected as she helped clear the dinner dishes, the messy, complicated compromises were more sustainable than clean breaks and fresh starts. Perhaps healing, of both finances and relationships, required honoring the past, even while building something new. The attic of the Sullivan family home had always been forbidden territory for Jamie and Ryan growing up, not explicitly, but through their mother's clear discomfort whenever they ventured near the pull-down stairs. "Nothing up there but dust and old junk," she'd say, redirecting their curiosity elsewhere. As an adult, Jamie had assumed it was simply another manifestation of her mother's obsession with order and appearance. The attic contained mess that couldn't be perfectly controlled, so it was better left ignored. Now, as they prepared the house for a potential downsizing despite Aunt Anne's pending investment, Jamie found herself assigned to this previously off-limits space. Her mother had provided a flashlight and some empty boxes with surprising casualness, as if the attic had never been mysterious at all. "Just sort things into keep, donate, and discard," she instructed. "I trust your judgment." The trust was new, a fragile bridge being built between them through the practical work of restructuring both business and home. Jamie accepted the assignment without comment, curious about what family secrets the attic might contain. The space was surprisingly organized given its neglect. Boxes labeled by year, old furniture draped with sheets, holiday decorations in clear plastic bins. Jamie worked methodically, starting with the boxes nearest the entrance and working her way deeper into the shadowy space. Most contained what she expected: outdated clothing, school projects, seasonal decorations too precious to discard, but too worn to display. She sorted efficiently, making decisions her younger self would never have been trusted to make about family possessions. 3 hours into the task, Jamie discovered something unexpected: a cedar chest tucked beneath the eaves, its brass hardware tarnished with age. Unlike the other storage containers, this one bore no label, no indication of its contents. She pulled it into the center of the attic where the light was better and lifted the heavy lid. Inside, carefully preserved, was evidence of a life she'd never known her mother to live: a leather jacket with fringe, concert tickets from rock shows in the 70s, protest pamphlets from environmental movements, a small stack of love letters tied with faded ribbon. Beneath these artifacts of rebellion lay a large envelope marked "Dreams," in flowing handwriting that bore little resemblance to her mother's current precise script. Jamie hesitated, feeling like an intruder in her mother's past, but curiosity won out. She opened the envelope and found architectural sketches, designs for furniture that blended traditional craftsmanship with modern aesthetics, innovative pieces that looked nothing like the conservative offerings of Sullivan furniture. "See, you found my hope chest," Jamie startled at her mother's voice. Elizabeth Sullivan stood at the top of the attic stairs, watching her daughter with an unreadable expression. "I'm sorry," Jamie said, closing the envelope. "I shouldn't have pried. It's all right." Her mother crossed the attic and sat on an old trunk facing Jamie. "I sent you up here knowing you might find it. Perhaps hoping you would." Jamie gestured to the contents of the chest. "These designs are incredible. Did you create them?" Her mother nodded, a hint of pride breaking through. Her customary reserve. "Before I married your father, I studied design briefly in college before transferring to business administration. I had no idea you were interested in furniture design." Jamie picked up one of the sketches, a rocking chair with clean lines and unexpected curves. These would still be relevant today. Timeless. That was the goal. Her mother touched the sketch gently. "I wanted to create pieces that honored traditional methods while embracing contemporary aesthetics. Why didn't you pursue it?" "These are really good, Mom." A familiar shadow crossed her mother's face, the slight tightening around the eyes that signaled retreat into privacy. But then, surprisingly, she continued, "Your grandfather, your father's father, was very traditional in his views. When I married into the family, I had ideas for expanding the business, for introducing new designs. He made it clear that wasn't my place." She straightened her posture, an unconscious gesture Jamie recognized as self-protection. "Later, when your father took over, I suggested revisiting some of these concepts. But by then, the business was struggling, and innovation seemed risky. "So you put your dreams in a box in the attic," Jamie said softly. "I focused on being a wife and mother, on supporting your father's vision for the company. It seemed like the right choice at the time." Her mother looked around the attic. "I kept these things to remind myself that I had been someone else once, before I was Mrs. Daniel Sullivan." Jamie absorbed this revelation, this glimpse of her mother as a young woman with ambitions and creativity that had been channeled into maintaining a perfect home and supporting others' dreams. It recontextualized so much of her mother's behavior, her rigid adherence to propriety, her investment in appearances. "Is that why you reacted so strongly when I left? Because I chose a path you couldn't?" Her mother considered this. "Perhaps. I never thought of it that way, but yes, that might be part of it." She picked up the leather jacket, running her fingers over the worn material. "I admired your courage, even while I resented it. You refused to be diminished." The admission hung in the air between them, an unprecedented moment of vulnerability from a woman who had always maintained careful control over her emotions. "It's not too late, you know," Jamie said, "for your designs. They could be part of the store's new direction." Her mother shook her head. "Those dreams belong to a different woman. A girl, really. The talent is still there." Jamie gestured to the sketches. "These could be signature pieces in the redesigned store. The Elizabeth Sullivan collection." Something flickered in her mother's eyes, a brief spark quickly suppressed. "Your father would never. Dad's adapting to a lot of changes right now, and he respects quality craftsmanship, which these designs clearly represent." Jamie arranged the sketches on the trunk between them. "At least think about it. It could be exactly the kind of bridge between tradition and innovation that we've been discussing." Her mother didn't agree, but she didn't reject the idea outright either. They continued sorting through the attic in companionable silence, the cedar chest and its contents set aside for further consideration. As they worked, Jamie discovered other unexpected treasures, a box of her own childhood achievements that her mother had preserved, including academic awards, art projects, and the business plan Jamie had created in high school that had won a regional competition. These mementos hadn't been discarded during the years of estrangement, just carefully stored away, as if waiting for reconciliation. Most surprising was a manila folder labeled Jamie's Career. Inside were newspaper clippings, printouts of online articles, and even a copy of Chicago Financial Monthly with Jamie's photo accompanying a profile of rising stars in investment management. "Dad wasn't the only one keeping track of me," Jamie said, holding up the magazine. Her mother busied herself with folding an old quilt. "We were always proud of you, even when we couldn't say it. But the photos, cutting me out, was childish and hurtful." Her mother met her gaze directly. "I was angry and hurt myself. I felt rejected, so I rejected you first. It wasn't my finest moment." The simple acknowledgement, offered without excuses or justification, was perhaps the closest thing to an apology her mother could manage. Jamie accepted it as such. "I found something else you should see," her mother said after a moment. She crossed to a stack of boxes in the corner and extracted a photo album from the one on top. "I kept these separate from the ones downstairs." Jamie opened the album to find intact family photos. Holidays, vacations, celebrations with her fully present, uncut and unerased from family history. "I couldn't bring myself to alter these," her mother explained. "So I hid them instead." Another act of cowardice. "Or preservation," Jamie suggested gently. "You kept the truth safe until we could face it again." They continued working through the afternoon, the task of sorting physical possessions becoming a metaphor for their emotional work, deciding what to preserve from the past, what to discard, what to transform into something new. As the light began to fade, casting long shadows across the attic floor, her mother said, "Your father has some things he's kept as well, in his workshop behind the store. Things of yours he couldn't part with." "Like what?" "You should ask him. Yourself." Her mother closed the lid on the cedar chest. "It might be good for both of you." The suggestion that Jamie initiate a personal conversation with her father was new territory in their evolving relationship. Previously, her mother had always managed the emotional landscape of the family, acting as intermediary and interpreter. "I will," Jamie promised. "And Mom, thank you for showing me these things, for trusting me with your past." Her mother nodded, a small smile softening her features. "Perhaps it's time we all stopped hiding the parts of ourselves that don't fit the perfect Sullivan image." As they carried boxes downstairs, Jamie reflected on the discoveries of the day, not just the physical artifacts, but the glimpses beneath her mother's carefully maintained facade. The rebellious girl with the leather jacket, the aspiring designer, the mother who proudly collected her estranged daughter's accomplishments in secret. These revelations didn't erase the hurt of the past 5 years, didn't instantly heal the breach in their relationship, but they added dimension and humanity to a woman Jamie had long viewed as merely rigid and judgmental. They created possibility where before there had been only fixed narratives about who each of them was and could be. That evening, as Jamie prepared to return to her hotel, her father handed her a small wooden box. "Your mother mentioned you were going through some old things today," he said, his discomfort with emotional moments evident in his stiff posture. "I thought you might want this." Inside the box was a small silver charm bracelet with a single charm, a miniature calculator. Jamie recognized it immediately, her gift on her 16th birthday, when she'd first expressed interest in finance. "You kept this?" she asked, surprised. "Of course," he cleared his throat. "It reminded me of when you first found your path, before it diverged from ours." Jamie closed her fingers around the bracelet, feeling its weight, light in her palm but heavy with meaning. "Thank you. It wasn't everything. There were still difficult conversations ahead, still financial challenges to navigate, still years of estrangement to process. But it was something real, a tangible acknowledgement of her as she was, not as they had wished her to be, a beginning, built on rediscovered truths rather than comfortable fictions." 3 months after Jamie first returned to Oak Ridge, Sullivan Furniture reopened in its new location. The historic downtown building had been transformed, exposed brick walls and original hardwood floors providing a warm backdrop for carefully curated displays. Floor-to-ceiling windows flooded the space with natural light, highlighting the craftsmanship of each piece. The grand reopening was modest by previous Sullivan standards. No extravagant party, no local newspaper advertisement proclaiming biggest sale ever. Instead, they'd sent personal invitations to loyal customers and targeted new demographics through social media campaigns Jamie had designed. "It feels different," her father said as they stood near the entrance, watching the first customers explore the showroom. "Smaller, but somehow more substantial. Quality over quantity," Jamie reminded him. "Every piece tells a story now." And they did. Each furniture grouping featured information about its design, the materials used, the craftspeople who created it. Most revolutionary was the corner dedicated to the Elizabeth Sullivan Collection. 5 pieces based on her mother's long-hidden designs, brought to life by local artisans under her supervision. Jamie watched her mother speak with a young couple examining one of her chairs, an elegant rocking chair with clean lines and subtle curves. Elizabeth Sullivan had always been poised, but now there was something new in her demeanor, a quiet confidence that came from creating rather than merely maintaining. The past 3 months had been intensely challenging. They'd sold the remaining commercial properties, though at lower prices than hoped. They'd liquidated excess inventory through a series of targeted sales. Her father had continued his financial counseling, gradually acknowledging his gambling as an addiction rather than just poor judgment. Most significantly, they'd sold the family home, a painful but necessary step in their financial recovery. Aunt Anne's investment had helped stabilize the business, but wasn't sufficient to maintain the oversized house. After much emotional deliberation, her parents had purchased a small craftsman bungalow within walking distance of the new store. The downsizing had forced them to confront decades of accumulated possessions, each item weighted with memory and identity. Jamie had mediated countless discussions about what to keep, what to discard, what to reinvent for their new life. "Sullivan Furniture looks good on you," said a familiar voice behind her. Jamie turned to find Ryan, who had arrived the previous evening for the reopening. "Thanks, though it's not really me. It's all of us." Her brother surveyed the transformed space. "I almost didn't recognize the place. It's actually cool. Don't sound so surprised," she teased. "Even furniture stores can evolve." Ryan's presence was another small miracle in their family's transformation. He'd been skeptical about the restructuring plan, but had provided remote input on the e-commerce platform, leveraging his industry connections to help source materials for the new collections. His weekend visit had stretched to 5 days as he'd been drawn into the excitement of the reopening. "Dad asked me to look at some expansion opportunities in North Carolina," Ryan mentioned casually. "Possible partnerships with my current employer." "Really?" "He didn't mention that to me. I think he wanted my take first. See if it was worth bringing to the official financial advisor." Ryan grinned. Don't worry. I told him any expansion should wait until we've proven the new model works. The we wasn't lost on Jamie. Her brother's unconscious inclusion of himself in the family business future. She didn't comment on it, not wanting to spotlight something that felt fragile and new. Smart. Advice. I knew that MBA would be useful someday. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a client from Jamie's Chicago firm, an elderly woman who had recently relocated to be near her grandchildren. Mrs. Henderson, what a lovely surprise. Jamie greeted her. I didn't know you. We're in town. Moved last month, dear. Your assistant mentioned you were helping with the family business, so I thought I'd come see for myself. Mrs. Henderson looked around approvingly. Quite impressive. Very different from what I expected. In a small town. We're trying to bridge traditional craftsmanship with contemporary design, Jamie explained, slipping easily into her professional persona. As she guided Mrs. Henderson through the showroom, Jamie realized she was speaking about Sullivan Furniture with genuine pride, something she couldn't have imagined 6 months earlier. The business still wasn't fully hers, might never be, but she had helped transform it into something that aligned with her values while honoring its heritage. Later that afternoon, as the initial rush of customers dwindled, her father approached, with a man Jamie recognized as the mayor of Oak Ridge. Jamie, you remember Mayor Wilson, her father said. He's been admiring our new approach. It's quite a transformation, the mayor acknowledged. A model for how traditional businesses can adapt to changing times. That's high praise, considering I remember you telling Dad that online retail would never work in Oak Ridge, Jamie replied, with a smile that softened the reminder. The mayor laughed good-naturedly. I've been known to be wrong occasionally, which is why I'm here, actually. The town is forming an economic development committee to help other local businesses modernize. We could use someone with your expertise. Jamie blinked in surprise. I'm flattered, but I'm only in Oak Ridge temporarily. My life and career are in Chicago. The committee would only meet monthly, the mayor continued. And in this digital age, some participation could be remote. Her father watched her carefully, his expression neutral. It's a prestigious appointment. The Sullivan name has always been associated with Oak Ridge's business community. There was no pressure in his tone, no expectation that she would accept, to maintain family tradition. That absence of pressure, the respect for her separate life, moved Jamie more than any plea would have. I'll consider it, she said. It would be meaningful work, helping other family businesses navigate change. After the mayor departed, her father remained beside her, watching customers explore the showroom. You've done good work here, Jamie. Whatever you decide about the committee, about your involvement going forward, you've helped create something sustainable. The acknowledgement, simple, direct, without qualifications, was perhaps the greatest gift her father could offer. Not grudging acceptance of her help in crisis, but recognition of her value as a professional, as a contributor in her own right. We did it together, she replied. All of us brought something essential to the table. Her father nodded, accepting this reframing of individual achievement into family collaboration. It was a small moment, unremarkable to outside observers, but it represented a fundamental shift in their relationship, from hierarchy to partnership, from rigid roles to flexible contributions. As evening approached and they prepared to close, for the day, Jamie found herself standing with both parents in the center of the showroom, taking in what they had created together. It's not what I imagined, her mother admitted. When I pictured Sullivan Furniture's future, it's smaller, more focused, but it feels more authentic somehow. Like us, Jamie suggested. Smaller in some ways, but more real. Her father placed an arm around her mother's shoulders, a rare public display of affection. To new beginnings, then. It wasn't perfect. The business still faced challenges. Their family relationships remained works in progress, with old hurts that sometimes surfaced unexpectedly. But standing in the transformed space that honored both tradition and innovation, Jamie felt something she hadn't expected to find in Oak Ridge: possibility, not just for Sullivan Furniture, but for the Sullivan family itself. 6 months after the grand reopening, Jamie returned to Oak Ridge for the first quarterly board meeting of Sullivan Furniture LLC, the new corporate structure they'd established as part of the business restructuring. The drive from the regional airport felt different now, familiar, but without the dread that had accompanied her first return. As she passed the Welcome to Oak Ridge sign, she felt a complex emotion that wasn't quite nostalgia, but wasn't estrangement either. something more nuanced, a recognition of connection without idealization. Her parents' new home, a craftsman bungalow with a deep front porch and a mature oak tree in the yard, came into view as she rounded the corner. It was smaller than their previous house, but more suited to their current life, with a garden her mother had embraced with unexpected enthusiasm, and a detached workshop where her father spent weekends restoring antique furniture pieces. The door opened before Jamie could knock, her mother greeting her with a hug that had become less awkward with practice. "Right on time," Elizabeth said, ushering her inside. Ryan's flight was delayed, but he should be here for dinner. The mention of her brother reminded Jamie how much had changed. Ryan now consulted regularly for Sullivan Furniture while maintaining his position in North Carolina. The siblings had rebuilt their relationship through the shared project of family reconciliation, discovering an adult friendship distinct from their childhood rivalry. "How's the new collection selling?" Jamie asked, following her mother to the kitchen, exceeding projections. Her mother's pride was evident. The Elizabeth Sullivan collection has garnered attention from several design blogs. "We've had inquiries about wholesale opportunities." Jamie smiled at her mother's casual use of business terminology that would have been foreign to her a year ago. Elizabeth had embraced her role as design director with unexpected vigor, her latent creativity flourishing when finally given space and validation. Dad mentioned something about expanding production capacity in his last email. "Yes, we're considering a partnership with a small manufacturer in North Carolina, one of Ryan's connections." Her mother handed Jamie a glass of iced tea. "We'll discuss the details at tomorrow's meeting, but the preliminary numbers look promising." They settled in the living room, where family photos now included Jamie and Ryan's adult achievements alongside childhood memories. The painful editing of the past had been addressed not by pretending it hadn't happened, but by adding new images to create a more complete narrative. "How's the gambling situation?" Jamie asked carefully. This topic remained sensitive, but their family had learned that avoidance only led to deeper problems. 6 months without a slip, her mother reported. "The support group has been more helpful than he expected. He's even mentoring a younger man who's just beginning recovery." This transformation in her father, from denial to acknowledgement to helping others, had been gradual but profound. The financial transparency requirements of Jamie's rescue plan had evolved into a genuine commitment to accountability. "And you? How's the transition been from managing crisis to managing stability?" Her mother considered this. "Easier in some ways, harder in others. During the crisis, roles were clear. You were the expert. We were following your lead. Now we're finding a new balance." "That's natural in any family business," Jamie assured her, "especially one that's undergone significant changes. Your father still struggles sometimes with the downsized operation. His identity was so tied to the scale of the business." Her mother's perception had sharpened over the past year, her observations about family dynamics more insightful as she developed her own voice. But the focus on quality over quantity suits him better than he expected. He's rediscovering his love of craftsmanship. They were interrupted by the arrival of Daniel Sullivan, who entered with the easy confidence that had always characterized him, though tempered now with a humility born of near disaster and recovery. "Jamie, didn't realize you'd arrived already." He embraced his daughter. Another change. These physical expressions of affection that had once been rare in the Sullivan household. "How was the drive?" "Good. I was just telling Mom that the new collection is getting attention online." Her father nodded, a hint of his old pride returning. "Quality speaks for itself. Your mother's designs are exceptional. I should have recognized that years ago." The acknowledgement, his recognition of his wife's talents and his own past blindness to them, reflected the deeper healing occurring within their marriage, alongside the business restructuring. As they prepared dinner together, the conversation flowed naturally between business matters and personal updates. Jamie shared news of her recent promotion at the Chicago firm. Her parents discussed their involvement in the local business community, and they all speculated about Ryan's mysterious +1 who would be joining him on this visit. The rhythms of family life had been reestablished, but with crucial differences. Disagreements were expressed directly rather than through passive-aggressive comments. Appreciation was stated explicitly rather than assumed. The Sullivan family was learning, sometimes awkwardly, to communicate with authenticity rather than performance. After dinner, as her parents cleared the table, Jamie's phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "How's the family reunion going? Crisis-free this time?" Jamie smiled as she typed her response. "Surprisingly normal. We're actually functioning, like a reasonably healthy family. It's weird. Maya replied immediately. Miracles never cease. Tell them I expect a discount on that fancy furniture when I redecorate. The doorbell rang, announcing Ryan's arrival. The reunion between siblings was warm, their competitive edge softened by shared purpose and separate successes. Ryan introduced his companion, not a romantic partner as they'd speculated, but a business colleague interested in the Sullivan model of family business transformation. Jamie, this is Alex Chen. He's considering a similar restructuring with his family's restaurant group and wanted to see a success story firsthand. The Sullivan family as a success story, the phrase would have seemed laughable a year ago when they were facing financial ruin and emotional bankruptcy. Yet here they were, not perfect, but functional. Their business smaller but sustainable. Their relationships damaged but healing. Later that evening, after Alex had departed for his hotel and Ryan had turned in for the night, Jamie found herself alone with her parents on the back porch. The spring air carried the scent of her mother's newly planted garden, and the sounds of small-town evening created a peaceful backdrop for conversation. I've been meaning to ask, Jamie said, breaking a comfortable silence. Have you thought about what happens with the business long-term? Succession planning? Her parents exchanged glances. Not the secretive communication of the past, but an open acknowledgement of shared thoughts. We've discussed several scenarios, her father began. Ryan has expressed interest in a more active role if we can structure it to work with his North Carolina position. And your involvement continues to be valuable, even at a distance, her mother added. The quarterly board meetings, your financial oversight, it's a model that's working for now. Jamie nodded, relieved they weren't pressuring her to return. Permanently. I've been thinking about expanding my practice to include family business consulting. My work with Sullivan Furniture has shown me how many families struggle with similar issues. You'd be excellent at that, her father said with genuine admiration. You have the financial expertise, but also the emotional intelligence to navigate family dynamics. The complement, specific, thoughtful, acknowledging both her professional and personal qualities, would have been unimaginable from the father who had once dismissed her career choice as abandonment of family legacy. The business will evolve, her mother said, just as we have. The important thing is maintaining connection while respecting individual paths. It was a philosophy that would have saved them years of estrangement had they embraced it earlier. But Jamie was learning that regret, like resentment, was a poor foundation for moving forward. To connection, she said, raising her glass in a small toast. Her parents joined her, the simple gesture affirming their commitment to this new understanding. They weren't a perfect family. The hurt of those 5 silent years hadn't vanished completely. They still sometimes fell into old patterns, still occasionally misunderstood each other's intentions. But they were learning to repair breaches when they occurred, rather than allowing them to widen into chasms. As stars appeared in the night sky above the modest home that had replaced their showpiece residence, Jamie felt a sense of peace that had eluded her for years, not because everything was resolved, but because they were facing both past and future with honesty. The Sullivan family was writing a new story, one that made space for individual dreams within the shared narrative of connection. It wasn't the story any of them had expected, but perhaps it was stronger for having been broken and mended. 1 year after Jamie had received her father's desperate text about foreclosure, the Sullivan family gathered for Grandmother Sullivan's 90th birthday celebration. The event was held in the community room at Sunny Pines, decorated with flowers from Elizabeth's garden, and featuring a display of Sullivan Furniture's signature pieces, including 2 chairs from the Elizabeth Sullivan collection. Jamie arrived, early to help with setup, finding her grandmother already holding court from her favorite armchair, supervising proceedings with clear-eyed authority that age hadn't diminished. "There's my financial wizard," Grandmother Sullivan called as Jamie entered. "Come tell me about the latest business triumph. Your father called yesterday, practically bursting with news about some design award." Jamie kissed her grandmother's cheek before sitting beside her. "Mom's rocking chair design won recognition from the American Furniture Designers Association. It's a big deal in the industry, especially for someone who's technically a newcomer." "Newcomer," Grandmother Sullivan snorted. "Elizabeth has been designing furniture in her head for 40 years. About time she got recognition for it." The party filled quickly with extended family, cousins, aunts, uncles, some of whom Jamie hadn't seen since before the estrangement. Aunt Anne, whose investment had helped stabilize the business, arrived with her husband and grown children. Various Sullivan relatives from neighboring states appeared with gifts and covered dishes, creating a genial chaos that spilled from the community room into the adjoining garden. What struck Jamie most was the easy way her parents moved through the gathering, her father no longer performing the role of successful patriarch, but genuinely engaging with relatives. Her mother no longer obsessed with perfect appearances, but laughing openly when one of the great-grandchildren toppled the carefully arranged dessert table. Ryan arrived with Alex Chen, whose friendship had evolved beyond business consultation, into something that made her brother's eyes brighten whenever the other man entered a room. They were taking it slowly, Ryan had explained to Jamie, both aware of the complexities of cross-country dating and family business entanglements. But watching them together, the casual intimacy of their interactions, the way they anticipated each other's needs, Jamie suspected this relationship had staying power. Midway through the celebration, Grandmother Sullivan tapped her glass for attention. "I'd like to say something while I still remember what it is," she announced with the directness that was her hallmark. "Looking around this room, I see the Sullivan family in all its messy glory. We've never been perfect, despite some people's efforts to maintain that illusion." Her pointed glance at Elizabeth drew knowing chuckles from the gathered relatives. What makes family meaningful isn't perfection. It's persistence. The willingness to begin again after failures, to forgive after hurts, to adapt when circumstances change. She raised her glass with a slightly trembling hand. "This past year, I've watched the younger generation of Sullivans learn this lesson. It gives me great hope for the next 90 years. As glasses were raised in response, Jamie felt a wave of emotion, not just for her grandmother's words, but for the journey they represented. A year ago, the Sullivan family had been fractured, the business failing, the future bleak. Today, they stood together, celebrating not just a milestone birthday, but a transformation none of them had imagined possible. After the party, as close family helped with cleanup, Jamie found herself working alongside her mother, wrapping leftover cake for residents who hadn't been able to attend. "Grandmother always did have a gift for cutting through pretense," Elizabeth commented, neatly tying a ribbon around a small box. "I spent decades trying to maintain the image she just dismissed as illusion." "You had your reasons," Jamie said, understanding her mother's perfectionism differently now. "You were protecting yourself, protecting the family, perhaps, but at what cost?" Her mother's hand stilled on the ribbon. "All those years of appearances, of controlling the narrative, and in the end, it was honesty that saved us, facing our problems directly instead of hiding them." Jamie considered this. Not just honesty about the problems, though. Honesty about the good things, too. Your design talent, Dad's craftsmanship, the real strengths in our family that got buried under expectations and roles. Her mother nodded, thoughtfully. "I've been thinking about what your grandmother said about persistence, about beginning again after failure. What about it? I think that's what we've been doing this past year. Not fixing the old family, but building a new one that acknowledges both our flaws and our strengths." It was an insight worthy of Maya, this recognition that reconciliation wasn't about returning to a previous state, but about creating something new from the fragments of the old. Jamie smiled at her mother, this woman she was still getting to know, still learning to appreciate in her complexity. "I like that way of thinking about it." After the cleanup was complete, Jamie drove her parents back to their bungalow. The evening air was warm with early summer. Windows down as they traveled the familiar streets of Oak Ridge. They passed the new Sullivan furniture location, its windows softly lit to showcase displays even after closing hours. "Almost a year since the reopening," her father remarked. "Hard to believe how much has changed. For the better," her mother added, reaching across to squeeze his hand. At the bungalow, Jamie declined their invitation to come in for coffee, citing an early flight back to Chicago the next morning. The goodbye on their front porch was easy, affectionate, without the weight of uncertainty that had characterized earlier departures. "We'll see you at the board meeting next month," her father said. "And don't forget, the Economic Development Committee meets the same weekend." Jamie had accepted the mayor's invitation to join the committee, finding unexpected satisfaction in helping other Oak Ridge businesses navigate changing markets. Her monthly visits had become a rhythm in her life, a connection to her hometown that felt chosen rather than obligatory. "I'll be there," she promised, "and I'll review those expansion proposals before then." Her mother hugged her goodbye. "Safe travels. Call when you land." The simple maternal request, not a demand or an expectation, just an expression of care, warmed Jamie as she drove to her hotel. These small moments of normal family interaction, once taken for granted, now felt precious because of their absence and return. Back in her Chicago apartment the next evening, Jamie placed a new photo on her mantle, a group shot from grandmother Sullivan's birthday. 4 generations of the family gathered around the matriarch's chair. Unlike the staged family portraits of her childhood, this one captured genuine emotion, laughter, connection, the slightly chaotic energy of a real family celebration. She stepped back to study it among her other framed photos. Professional, achievements, trips with Maya, moments from her independent life. The family photo didn't dominate the display, but took its place among the various aspects of her identity, integrated rather than separate. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. Made it back to NC. Thinking about 4th of July in Oak Ridge? Alex. Wants to see the parade. Jamie smiled as she replied, I'll be there. Mom's already planning a backyard barbecue. A year ago, such casual planning for family holidays would have been unimaginable. Now it felt natural, part of the new relationship they were building. One that respected their separate lives while creating space for meaningful connection. As she prepared for bed, Jamie thought about the journey from that first desperate text to this moment of quiet contentment. They had faced financial ruin, confronted painful family dynamics, dismantled facades, and rebuilt both business and relationships on more authentic foundations. The process hadn't been linear or neat. There had been setbacks, moments of regression, into old patterns, difficult conversations that left everyone drained. The gambling addiction remained a daily challenge for her father, the need for control and ongoing struggle for her mother. Jamie herself still sometimes reacted to family interactions from a place of old hurt rather than present reality. But they persisted, as Grandmother Sullivan had noted. They began again after failures, forgave after hurts, adapted as circumstances changed. They were learning, however imperfectly, to be family in a way that honored individual authenticity while maintaining connection. In the morning, Jamie would return to her work at the Chicago firm, to her life built deliberately separate from Sullivan Furniture and Oak Ridge. But that separation no longer felt like rejection, by her or of her. It was simply one aspect of a complex, evolving relationship between adult family members, finding new ways to remain connected across physical and philosophical distances. The Sullivan family had been broken, but not beyond repair. The healing wasn't about erasing the breaks, but about acknowledging them as part of the family story, visible in the mended places, but no longer threatening the structural integrity of their connection, like the photographs her mother had once cut apart, and now carefully preserved intact. They were learning that family identity could accommodate both cohesion and individuality. Both shared history and divergent paths. It wasn't a perfect resolution. Life rarely offered those, but it was something more valuable, an authentic reconciliation that honored the full, complicated truth of who they had been, who they were, now, and who they were becoming together. The frame had been broken, but not beyond healing, and the picture it now contained was richer, more nuanced, and more genuinely representative of the Sullivan family than any carefully staged portrait had ever been.